Chapter 175. That's right, I was busy picking plum blossoms in the forest. Eldest sister-in-law, look, I personally plucked this. Isn't it pretty? Sure, Yulin chuckled as she pointed at the shrugged plum blossoms on the table. It's really pretty. Fourth younger sister has good taste. Sangwon smiled as she praised. She then quickly smiled and said, next time you want plum blossoms, just ask the maids to do it. Don't do it yourself. What if you prick your hand? Sure, Yulin raised her chin and said, I'm not afraid. How could the maids know which ones are good? They're the ones who don't have good taste. Everyone laughed. The sisters and sisters-in-law chatted and laughed as they roasted meat. It wasn't until Shi Fengju came that they realized it was already noon. They hurriedly bid each other farewell and returned to their own courtyards. They winked at their eldest brother and sister-in-law and made fun of them. Shi Fengju laughed and scolded them for making trouble, but Sangwon was embarrassed and lowered her head with a smile. And here I was wondering where you had gone. So you were with those girls? Shi Fengju smiled and said, does Wan Nyong like to eat roasted meat? After the new year, I'll take you to the farmstead. Let's get some game and roast it properly, okay? Okay, after the new year, I'll be waiting for you to treat me. Sangwon smiled and hurriedly said, I thought you would be eating outside with young Master Zhuang at noon. I actually forgot the time and went back. Sangwon smiled embarrassedly. Shi Fengju smiled and leaned closer to her and asked in a low voice, are you afraid that eldest sister will come looking for you? Sangwon was startled and immediately felt embarrassed. However, she pitifully and honestly nodded. So you've seen through me? That's right, didn't I come out of hiding? If eldest sister comes looking for me, I won't be able to handle it. Shi Fengju's heart softened. He couldn't help but hold her hand and said softly, if she comes looking for you, just push it to me. Eldest brother-in-law is too hateful. From time to time, he'll cause trouble and annoy us. Yesterday, Fenghua said he was coming back, but I told him not to come back first. If he comes back, eldest brother-in-law will pester him every day. That can't be. Sangwon was surprised. She smiled and said, eldest brother-in-law and third brother aren't like-minded, why would he look for third brother? Shi Fengju sneered slightly and said, in our Shi family, only third brother is a scholar. Only third brother has a common language with a scholarly family like him. Eldest brother-in-law, third, eldest brother-in-law. Eldest brother-in-law, eldest brother third brother-in-law, third, eldest brother-in-law, eldest Sangwon replied with an "oh" and remained silent. Her expression was a little gloomy. Shi Fengju was puzzled at first, but soon understood. His sarcastic words about scholarly family made his little wife feel uncomfortable. Shi Fengju felt a little apologetic, but he didn't know how to explain. He stopped her and smiled, this year's plum blossoms are blooming very well. Since we're passing by here, let's go. I'll break off 2 of them and put them in a vase for you, okay? Sangwon shook her head and smiled. What's the point of breaking off the plum blossoms here? This flower is only beautiful when it blooms in the garden. It's not like roses or lilies. If it's placed in the house, it'll lose its elegance. Shi Fengju smiled and said, do you like roses or lilies? There should be a lot in our greenhouse. Tomorrow, I'll have someone send some to Ning Garden. Sangwon sneered and said, don't make trouble for these things. The flowers that should be placed in the vase for the new year have already been allocated. After the new year, they should be placed in the vase one after another. What are the servants in charge of the greenhouse going to do if you say something like that? If they don't know, they'll think that it's my idea. Shi Fengju frowned slightly and complained, why do you have so many misgivings when taking things from your own family? We're becoming more and more like outsiders, and outsiders are becoming more and more stylish. Sangwon knew that he was thinking of Ran Jixin again, so she held his hand and smiled gently. This isn't misgivings, it's respect for the elders. The elders haven't placed the vase in their rooms yet, so naturally, we can't do it in our rooms either. Moreover, I'm in charge of the family, so I have to be fair and just to make people accept me. No matter what, others are still others, and they can't become the master. Besides, why should we lower ourselves to the same level as those people? Shi Fengju smiled and pinched her face. Young mistress is right. It's not worth lowering ourselves to the same level as those people. Don't, your hand is cold. Sang-won was startled and hurriedly dodged. She secretly thought that it was fortunate that the people who came along were all her trusted subordinates. Shi Fengju insisted on pinching her face and smiled. Is that so? It's clearly your face that's colder. While the two of them were joking around, they suddenly heard someone cough behind them. Gu Fengzi's soft voice sounded, "Big cousin, big sister." Sang-won's body stiffened, but the smile on her face remained the same. She gently turned her head and saw Gu Fengzi, dressed in a plain white dress and a plain green cloak. She was accompanied by Lan Xiang as she walked forward. She gracefully curtsied towards her and Shi Fengju. "Big cousin, big sister, what a coincidence." Shi Fengju couldn't help but glance at Sang-won and sighed in his heart. He nodded at Gu Fengzi and asked lightly, "What are you doing out here on such a cold day?" Gu Fengzi smiled sweetly and replied softly, "Thank you for your concern, big cousin. Don't worry, Fengzi will take good care of myself. I've been staying in the room for too long, so I came out to relax and get some fresh air. I didn't expect to come here. Big cousin and big sister sure are in the mood. If there's nothing else, hurry back. We should also be leaving." Shi Fengju was speechless. Why didn't he realize before that she had the potential to take the blame and comfort herself? Every word she said was related to him, and she even deliberately did it in front of Won Nyong. Gu Fengzi smiled and said, "Big sister's body is thin, so be careful not to catch a cold. It's better to go back early. Big cousin, can you do me a favor?" Gu Fengzi said as she smiled gently at Sang-won. "Big sister won't mind, right?" Sang-won's heart was filled with disgust, and she couldn't help but feel impatient. When she heard this, the corners of her eyes twitched as she glanced at Shi Fengju. With a faint smile, she shook her head and smiled at Gu Fengzi. "If you have something to say, take your time to talk. I'll be leaving first." Shi Fengju didn't hesitate to grab Sang-won's hand tightly, not allowing her to leave. He said to Gu Fengzi, "What's the matter? Say it." Shi Fengju was secretly angry. Gu Fengzi really couldn't be given any face. She dared to make Won Nyong suffer in front of him. He couldn't help but feel guilty. In the past, when he didn't have Won Nyong in his heart, he naturally wouldn't think of her. Thinking back to how much she had done to Won Nyong at that time, Gu Fengzi's heart suddenly sank. She didn't think that her big cousin wouldn't even give her a chance to talk to him alone. He held Sang-won's hand in front of her. There was no need for words to explain everything. In his heart, Sang-won was the most important. He didn't want Sang-won to suffer any grievances. Perhaps it was because of the strong north wind, but Gu Fengzi's face became as white as paper. She smiled and said, "Actually, it's nothing. I just saw that the red plum blossoms in the plum forest in front of us are blooming very well. I want big cousin to help me break off 2 branches to put in a vase. Big cousin, you're the best at picking plum blossoms. The ones you picked in the past were all very good. They were stylish and could bloom for half a month without withering. Big cousin, please break off another one for me." Sang-won didn't want to listen anymore. She couldn't help but gently shake off her hand. Shi Fengju tightened his grip. She raised her eyes to look at him angrily, but he turned a deaf ear. "You're still in mourning. It's better if you don't do these things in the house. Hurry up and go back. We should also go," Shi Fengju said as he pulled Sang-won away. Sang-won's lips moved, but she didn't say anything in the end. She just let him pull her away. Gu Fengzi stared blankly with her eyes wide open. She stared blankly as the two of them secretly left together. For a moment, it was as if there was only a blank space left in the world. She was the loneliest and most desolate person. No one would value her or miss her. He rejected her in front of Sang-won. He wasn't even willing to help her with such a small matter. Was he expressing his feelings to Sang-won? Gu Fengzi only felt her heart fiercely throbbing. There had never been a time when the pain was as intense as this one. It directly attacked her heart, making it impossible for her to deceive herself and others. She seemed to have really lost him. She had lost to Sang-won. Decades of feelings couldn't compare to half a year after she married into the family. How could she be willing to accept this? Lan Xiang looked worriedly at Gu Fengzi, whose face was as white as snow and whose expression was ferocious. She held her arm and said softly, "Miss, let's go back." Gu Fengzi didn't say anything. She turned around and walked silently in the direction of Peony Park. She couldn't help but raise her head and look at the plum blossom forest not far away. Hatred surged in her heart. Mourning. Mourning again. Unless she was a fool, she wouldn't believe this again. This was clearly his excuse. Sang-won finally broke free from Shi Fengju's hand. His warmth was still on her hand. "Wan Nyang." Shi Fengju tilted his head and looked at her. He said softly, "Don't worry. I'll handle the matter that I promised you properly." And Sang-won forced a smile and looked up. "I didn't say that I didn't believe you." Shi Fengju's heart relaxed. He smiled and sighed, "But I saw that you weren't very happy. I thought you were angry." Sang-won's face stiffened. She said indifferently, "I'm not angry. I just feel a little awkward and uncomfortable." Shi Fengju was happy to hear this. He gently put his arm around her shoulder and said with a smile, "Don't make yourself uncomfortable because of irrelevant things. My good Wan Nyang, your husband will be distressed." Sang-won's face became hot. She quickly pushed his hand away and said angrily, "What are you doing? You're letting others see." Shi Fengju laughed and let go of her hand. The two returned to Ning Garden together. The servant girls served lunch. Sang-won had just eaten barbecued meat with Shi Lian and the others. Seeing the table full of food, she couldn't eat anymore. She sat to the side and accompanied Shi Fengju. From time to time, she would put food in his bowl, but she didn't eat. Shi Fengju said with heartache, "You girls are too much. How can you be so rude? How can you eat so much barbecued food? Be careful not to hurt your stomach." He ordered the servants to boil a small pot of sweet date porridge in a clay pot. After it was done, he ordered the servants to serve a bowl for her. Sang-won felt warm inside. After eating the small bowl of sweet and glutinous porridge, she felt her stomach and stomach feel much better. The little bit of unpleasantness finally disappeared. Chapter 176. While the two of them were talking in the warm room, Sang-won began to complain, "There's no problem with preparing New Year's gifts for the elders of the Ran family, but what if eldest sister comes to ask about the gifts for eldest brother-in-law's friends? What should I do?" Sure, Yu-mei didn't dare to order her mother and brother around, but she had the right to order her foreign sister-in-law around. As long as she forced Sang-won to agree, Wang and Shi Fengju wouldn't be able to say anything. Shi Fengju frowned. "Didn't eldest sister ask you to wait for her in the room? I'll get someone to invite her over right now. I'll talk to her personally. Eldest brother-in-law is getting more and more outrageous. Eldest sister is the same. We're in our home, so how can she let him have her way? That's for the best. No matter how bad eldest brother-in-law is, he's still eldest sister's husband. If he insists on doing something, eldest sister can't do anything about it." Sang-won didn't care about his complaints. Anyway, he could complain, but she couldn't agree. She only cared that she was finally free from trouble. She said to Luya, "Ask someone to go to Banana Courtyard and ask eldest sister to come here." She glanced at Shi Fengju and said, "If eldest sister asks if eldest young master is here, just say he's not." Luya glanced at Shi Fengju, who didn't say anything, and answered, "Yes." Then she left. Shi Yu-mei indeed asked if Shi Fengju was here. When she heard that he wasn't, she immediately put on a cloak and hurried over with her maidservants. She was afraid that if she was too slow and didn't finish talking, her brother would come back. That would be terrible. Shi Yu-mei didn't expect to see Shi Fengju and Sang-won when she entered the warm room. "Why is second younger brother here too?" Shi Yumei was shocked and her expression changed. She immediately glared at Sang-won, trying to blame her for what was going on. Eldest sister. Shi Fengju smiled and asked her to sit down. I just came back from outside and heard from Wan Yang that eldest sister had something to do. As her brother, of course I have to care about eldest sister. Big sister, if you have anything to say, just say it. That's right, big sister. As long as Wan Yang can do it, I will do it, Sang-won said. How could he say that? Shi Yumei stammered, and the smile on her face became forced. Big sister. Shi Fengju's face flashed with a hurt expression. He smiled bitterly and said, Are you still angry that I didn't give you face in front of mother this morning? Big sister is trying to distance herself from me. That's not true. Shi Yumei was so anxious and impulsive that she couldn't hide it anymore. She blurted out, Actually, it's about what happened this morning. Second brother, please help big sister this time. Your brother-in-law's friends. Your brother-in-law said that he can't let them look down on him. If he doesn't even give them a New Year's gift, they will think that he looks down on them and it will damage his reputation. Shi Fengju said with a smile, Brother-in-law, I don't think you're right. Big sister, think about it. If you sell all your properties in Mengxian, how can brother-in-law's friends not know that he is temporarily staying with us? Where would he get the income to buy New Year's gifts? If he really gives them gifts, they will laugh at him. They will laugh at him for relying on his mother-in-law's family to keep up appearances. His pride as a scholar is gone. What kind of ability is that? That would only damage his reputation. Shi Fengju sneered in his heart. Reputation. Did he still have a reputation? He remembered clearly what the people in the county said when he went to Mengxian on the 15th of August. He was too embarrassed to listen or mention it, yet he still talked about reputation with such conviction. Shi Yumei was stunned. She wanted to refute but couldn't find the words to do so. She couldn't say that her husband relying on his family's property to keep up appearances was something to be proud of and flaunt, right? Second brother, Shi Yumei forced a smile and said, No matter what, we can't lack the interactions between friends. Otherwise, our friendship will fade after a while. Why don't we take it that you are lending me money and deduct it from our monthly allowance? What do you think? Wasn't the monthly allowance the Shi family's money? Shi Fengju didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Sang-won couldn't help but shed tears of sympathy for Shi Yumei. If she married such a shameless and self-proclaimed noble husband, she would rather cut off all her worries with a pair of scissors. Big sister, Shi Fengju said seriously, what kind of friends are those people? Those who didn't abandon you in times of trouble and took the initiative to lend you a helping hand are real friends. When you were in debt, which one of them took the initiative to help you? Instead, they took brother-in-law's 4 treasures of the study. They went to brothels, taverns, rented a place to hold poetry gatherings. They had families and businesses but they didn't pay for it. Instead, they asked brother-in-law to put it on credit. Big sister, did you forget about these things? You still want to treat such a person as a friend? I don't think you should treat them like your ancestors. If you ask me, brother-in-law becoming like this today is definitely related to those people. Big sister, you have to come up with some ideas to persuade brother-in-law and not let him be muddle-headed again. Brother-in-law will only benefit if he cuts off these so-called friends early on. Shi Yumei sighed. How could I not know this? But your brother-in-law, you also know that he is a one-track-minded person. He treats those indecent people as his friends, but when I try to persuade him, he will scold me for being a woman's view, and don't blindly join in if you don't know anything. Second brother, just treat it as helping big sister. Anyway, since he is far away now, those people can't instigate brother-in-law to do anything. Just treat it as buying some peace and quiet. Big sister, Shi Fengju didn't know what to say. He was both angry and distressed. He said faintly, You can't listen to brother-in-law like this anymore. Big sister, it's not that I don't want to spend this money. I won't say a word if I spend it on other things, but this is the only thing I can't spend it on. I don't even need to know what those people are in Mengxian. Big sister, you must know, right? To put it bluntly, brother-in-law hasn't even passed the exam to become an official yet, but he dares to treat you and our family members like this. If he really becomes successful in the future, just think about how he will treat you. Big sister, you can't always give in like this. Shiryu was stunned. Her mind was blank. After a long sigh, she forced a smile and said, I know you are doing this for my own good. I also know what you are saying, but, sigh, forget it. You are right, I can't let him do as he pleases. Those people in Mengxian, the further away they are, the better. Second brother, I won't disturb you anymore. I will go back first. Shi Fengju still wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. He stood up with Sang Wan to send her off. Big sister, take care. Shiryu replied with an N. Her eyes suddenly fell on Sang Wan and stared straight at her face. Her stare made Sang Wan feel strange. She smiled and said, In the future, when I am free, I will come and talk to sister-in-law. Sister-in-law, you won't find me boring, right? I don't dare to find you boring, but I can't afford to offend you. Sang Wan complained in her heart, but on the surface, she smiled and said, How can that be? Big sister, feel free to come. Shiryume's lips curled into a smile as she turned around to leave. Don't worry, big sister won't find trouble with you. Shi Fengju gently patted his wife's back. Sang Wan smiled and shook her head. She helped him sit on the Kong bed and said, I treat her with respect, so she won't do anything. Don't be angry. Brother-in-law is big sister's husband. Her position is actually quite difficult. Shi Fengju snorted and said, How can I not be angry? How can there be such a shameless man in this world? Tell me, why does our family keep recruiting such people? Shi Fengju thought of Gu Jin and Sang Wan's second uncle and second aunt. Sang Wan also thought of this and said with a smile, Every family has its own difficulties. Our family's difficulties are like this, but other families have their own difficulties. It's just that we don't know and can't understand. It's the new year, so don't be angry. It's not good. Shi Fengju laughed at her words. He held her in his arms and sighed softly. Fortunately, I still have you, Wan Yong. I like you more and more. Sang Wan slightly stiffened. She smiled and pried his hands away, saying, It's broad daylight and you're getting touchy again. Shi Fengju said, You clearly know that I have a belly full of anger. Can't you just listen to me and comfort me for once? Don't worry, which bold servant dares to barge in? This prince will skin her alive. Sang Wan giggled and made a funny face at him, saying, This prince is so good at speaking ruthlessly. Aren't you afraid of scaring people? Did I scare you? This prince will compensate you. Shi Fengju's heart swayed when he saw her happy yet angry appearance. He hugged her tightly and lowered his head to kiss her red lips. Sang Wan's body and mind trembled. She moaned and subconsciously wrapped her arms around his neck to kiss him. While the two of them were enjoying the beautiful scenery in the room, Shiryu quickly walked back to Banana Courtyard. She looked at the door in front of her and couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. She pretended to be calm as she walked into the room. Before she could say anything, she heard Ran Jixin's serious and dignified voice. Is it done? You remember what I told you and didn't miss anything, right? The 4 treasures of the study must be a set from Gufeng Zhai or Guangwen Zhai. 4 calligraphy and painting. Remember to frame the works of famous people. Don't casually use ordinary ones. 4 ancient cauldrons and incense burners. Choose simple, elegant, and small ones. Big ones are too cumbersome and will make people laugh at you. Don't forget to pair them with a box of good fragrances. Agarwood and plum blossom fragrance will do. Those vulgar and rotten ones won't do. These are enough. As for the clothes and food, they don't care about them. They won't lower their taste. Hey, why do you keep looking at me like that? Did you hear what I said just now? Is that what you told your sister-in-law? Don't go back and buy the wrong things and trouble her to return them. Shiryu didn't think so before, but after hearing what her second brother said and seeing her husband like this, she felt ashamed, angry, ashamed, and sour. What kind of husband did she marry? Although this was her maiden home, he clearly thought of himself as the #1 master from the way he gave out orders and paid attention to details. Even she felt ashamed, but he still acted as if it was natural. Humph. Shi Yumei coldly snorted and sat down unceremoniously. She ordered Cui Zhu to pour tea and took a few sips unhurriedly. Seeing that her husband's face was getting colder and colder, she slowly put down the teacup and took out a silk handkerchief to gently wipe the corner of her mouth. She faintly said, "I didn't tell her." "What did you say?" Ran Jixian's face suddenly became very ugly. Chapter 177. I didn't tell my sister-in-law. Shi Yumei raised her voice and said coldly, "Master, wake up. This is the Shi household, not the Ran household. Those friends of yours. Impudent." Ran Jixian coldly shouted and interrupted her. He pointed at her and shouted, "Are you teaching me a lesson? Is this the upbringing of the Shi household? As a wife, how dare you talk back to your husband? You asked me a question, and I answered it. How is that talking back?" Shi Yumei was also angry. "Look at yourself now. What is this?" Ran Jixian slammed the table angrily and snorted, "Don't talk so much nonsense with me. In the end, aren't you all just looking down on me with a pair of snobbish eyes and despising me for being poor? Humph, when I become rich in the future, I'd like to see what kind of face you all have. So what if you have some stinky money? If you can't bear to part with the money, I won't beg you either. Humph, I'll buy it myself." "Master," Shi Yumei said angrily, "which one of those people treated you as a friend? If they really treated you as a friend, wouldn't they know that you're staying in my family's house? Our family has nothing left. If they really were friends, would they still be thinking about your New Year's gift?" When Ran Jixian heard Shi Yumei say the word "stay here," it was a huge blow to his self-esteem. It made him feel as if he was living under someone else's roof, and he couldn't help but want to point at Shi Yumei's nose and scold her back. Unfortunately, no matter how unyielding he was, it was useless because he was indeed staying in someone else's house. Because of this, Ran Jixian felt even more embarrassed and angry. He held back and ignored her words and snorted, "What do you know? When did I say that my friends were thinking about my New Year's gift? Friends should reciprocate politeness, don't you understand? We gave it to them as a token of our sincerity, not whether they were thinking about it or not. This is the friendship between friends. What does your family mean? You want me to be all alone and have no friends, don't you?" Only in front of those friends, listening to their flattery and all kinds of flattery, Ran Jixian felt that he was a man and barely got back a little self-esteem as a man. How could he lose them so easily? The more down and out he was, of course, he wouldn't admit that he was down and out now, the more he wanted to put on a show so that they would always remember his good deeds. If he knew that the reason why people were fawning on him was because he was a fool and gullible, and because of the Shi family's wealth, who knew how angry he would be? "What do you mean?" Shi Yumei was also angry. She sneered and said, "Don't blame my family for everything. What did my family do to you? What you eat, what you wear, what you live in, including the books you read now, and the concubines who serve you, which one of them isn't given by our family? I've provided you with good food and drinks, but you're getting more and more arrogant. Let me tell you, since you're so capable, you should go and greet your friends yourself. Why should you let my brother stand up for you? Do you think my brother is someone who can run errands for you?" After saying that, Shi Yumei glared at him fiercely and exhaled happily. The depression in her heart was swept away, and she felt extremely carefree. She knew that her husband had a strong self-esteem and was a proud person. Ever since they returned to her family, she was afraid of hurting his self-esteem, so she carefully went along with him and coaxed him all the time. When he complained about her family in front of her, she tolerated it. When he made excessive requests, she also did her best to fulfill them for him. But now, she realized that it was useless. He couldn't be considerate of her feelings at all. Instead, he became sharper and more arrogant. Did he ever think about how difficult it was for her to be stuck in the middle? Even if he didn't think about her, She was his wife and wouldn't dare to complain. But her mother and brother were innocent. Why should they be subjected to his nonsense? You're rebelling. Ran Zhixian was so shocked that his face turned green and white. He pointed at Shi Yumei with a trembling finger and was speechless for a long time. You think you're so great just because your family has some stinky money? What the hell? Ran Zhixian sneered. It's not that great. Shi Yumei also sneered, but aren't you still using it? Shi Yumei's words were like the sharpest needle that fiercely pierced Ran Zhixian's heart. It was so painful that his heart shrank into a ball. There were only two words in his mind. Rebelling. Master, madam. If you have something to say, let's talk nicely. Stop arguing. It's inauspicious to argue during the new year. Cui Bao was relying on Ran Zhixian's favor. Seeing that he was being bullied by Shi Yumei, she hurriedly stepped forward and gently persuaded him to change the topic. Ran Zhixian coldly snorted. He finally had a way out. He flicked his sleeves and said, I'm too lazy to talk to you. Then he angrily pulled Cui Bao to the study room. Shi Yumei's face was terrifyingly cold. She glared at their backs with hatred and did not say a word. Madam, please calm down. Cui Zhu gave a look to the maidservants to leave. She poured a cup of hot tea and offered it to Shi Yumei. Cui Zhu. Shi Yumei's eyes unconsciously dripped with tears. She looked at Cui Zhu and said, You've been the best to me since we were young. We're the most intimate. You once begged me not to be a concubine and I promised you. But in the end, I didn't do it. Cui Zhu, I'm sorry. Shi Yumei could not help but cry and sob. Madam. Cui Zhu's face turned pale. Her eyes flashed with indescribable pain and tears immediately rushed out without warning. She quickly blinked her eyes to wipe away the tears in her eyes and said with a smile, Madam, what are you saying? It's all in the past. Furthermore, madam, you've been so good to me. To be able to serve you for the rest of my life and not be separated from you is also a blessing. I've wronged you, I've really wronged you. Shi Yumei heard her words and felt even more heartache. She wiped her tears and said, I shouldn't have been soft-hearted at that time. Madam, don't say any more. Cui Zhu gently shook her head. Her eyes were faintly glistening with tears. Shi Yumei sighed and held Cui Zhu's slightly cold hands. She said, After the new year, I'll tell Master to promote you to a proper concubine. This way, madam. Cui Zhu's face changed greatly. Her knees went soft and she knelt in front of her. Madam, don't. I beg you, I don't want to. Why? Shi Yumei was confused. Cui Zhu was now Ran Zhixian's woman. Of course, being a concubine was better than being a concubine. Was she really that stupid? Shi Yumei gently said, Don't be embarrassed, I really think so. This way, we'll be sisters in the future. If you have another son or daughter in the future, you'll be no different from me. Cui Zhu, I really want to make it up to you. I don't want to. I'd rather serve you like this for the rest of my life. Cui Zhu was anxious. Her face was pale as she kowtowed to Shi Yumei and impatiently begged. Shi Yumei was greatly affected, but she still comforted her. Cui Zhu, I really want to make it up to you. I've always been straightforward with my words, and I'm definitely not testing you. This is all I can do for you now. Cui Zhu was almost crying. She begged, Madam, I really don't need any compensation. I beg you, I just want to be like this. I beg you, I beg you. Shi Yumei saw that she was so stubborn. She was grateful for her loyalty, but she also felt sorry for her. She sighed and said, If you really don't want to, I won't force you. But you have to think about it carefully. Master isn't an official yet, so everything is fine. But if he becomes an official in the future, it won't be so easy to change. Cui Zhu impolitely said, I've thought about it carefully. I want to serve you like this for the rest of my life. This is the truth from the bottom of my heart. There's no falsehood. Silly girl. Shi Yumei sighed. Fine, since you don't want to, I won't force you. AI, you silly girl, why are you so silly? I really feel sorry for you. Madam, don't say that. Cui Zhu shook her head and said, You treat me like a sister, I can understand. I'll definitely serve you well and never leave you for the rest of my life. Don't say any more, quickly get up. Shi Yumei's heart ached and she pulled Cui Zhu up. Shi Yumei raised her head and saw Cui Bao standing at the door. She looked like she wanted to come in but didn't. Her face darkened and she put on airs and said, What are you doing here instead of serving master in the study? What's the matter? Madam. Cui Bao gracefully walked up to Shi Yumei and curtsied. She smiled and said, Master asked me to come. I have something to ask you. Speak. Shi Yumei snorted. Yes. Cui Bao forced herself to smile and said, Master asked how much money you have left. He asked me to ask Madam to give it to him. What? Shi Yumei choked in anger and said hatefully, What does he want the money for? Did he say it? Cui Bao hemmed and hawed. Shi Yumei was an impatient person. How could she care about that? She raised her eyebrows and shouted, Speak. Cui Bao was shocked and quickly said, Master said that he wants to buy New Year's gifts for his friends in Mengxian. Cui Bao only conveyed Ran Jixian's words. In fact, Cui Bao didn't dare to say it in front of Shi Yumei. She knew that Ran Jixian's angry complaints were very unpleasant. Madam was a little different today. She didn't think that Shi Yumei was tired of living and took the initiative to ask for a scolding. What? Even though Cui Bao only conveyed the message, Shi Yumei's face turned pale. She stared coldly at Cui Bao and her palms were slightly cold. He really said that? Shi Yumei was angry and bitter. She said over and over again in her heart, This is my husband, this is my husband. Yes. Cui Bao subconsciously shrank her shoulders and answered in a low voice. Shi Yumei's face was gloomy. After a while, she pointed at Cuiyu and said, Go and get that box. Yes. Madam. Cuiyu answered and went into the bedroom. In a moment, she came out with a half-foot wooden box and stood beside Shi Yumei. Give it to her. Shi Yumei didn't even have the mood to look at it. She directly asked her to give it to Cui Bao. The rest of the monthly allowance is here. Let him do as he sees fit. Cui Bao didn't dare to say anything. He complied and took the box. Then, he hurriedly left. Shi Yumei sighed and waved her hand weakly. You can leave. I want to be alone for a while. Cuiyu looked at her worriedly and quietly left. Chapter 178. Ran Jixian disdained to deal with the stench of money. Seeing Cui Bao bring the box over, he waved his hand indifferently. Count how much there is. Yes, master. Cui Bao's eyes lit up. She loved to count money. Even if the money wasn't hers, it was good to count it for fun. Master, it's a total of 86 taels and 4 coins. Cui Bao quickly counted the money and reported it with a smile. While Ran Jixian wasn't paying attention, she secretly hid 2 or 3 taels of silver. So little. Ran Jixian, who was sitting on the soft couch with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes and said in disbelief, Did you really count it? Cui Bao's heart tightened. She was afraid that he would find out that she had stolen the money. She nodded and said, Yes, I counted it very clearly. It's 86 taels and 4 coins. If you don't believe me, you can count it again. Okay. Ran Jixian impatiently waved his hand. 86 taels and 4 coins. This amount of money wasn't even enough for him to treat people to a restaurant once. What could he do with this amount of money? Ran Jixian got up and rushed to the living room. He vigorously lifted the curtain and a gust of cold wind came in. Shi Yumei, who was lost in thought, was startled. Seeing him, she said angrily, What are you doing? You almost scared me to death. That's all I have left. I didn't keep a single coin. You can do whatever you want with it. Ran Jixian was stunned. He couldn't ask any questions. He wanted to ask Shi Yumei if Wang didn't give her a secret stash of money. As a mother, she wouldn't be so stingy, right? There should be at least a few hundred taels, right? Thinking about it, he felt that he couldn't put down his face. He glanced at the furnishings in the room. He was born in a rich family. Naturally, he could see that the furnishings in the room were very valuable. If he took a few of them out and sold them, he could get a lot of money. However, he couldn't say this out loud. He had to preserve his strength and backbone. "Where's Cui Zhu?" Ran Jixuan looked around and didn't see Cui Zhu, so he asked in a rough voice. Shi Yumei said coldly, "I want to have some peace and quiet, so I asked her to leave." Ran Jixuan snorted and sat down. He said coldly, "You're right. Since we're staying at your mother's house, we should be tactful and not cause trouble for them." Shi Yumei was overjoyed, thinking that Ran Jixuan had figured it out. Before she could say anything, she heard Ran Jixuan continue, "So I decided to sell Cui Zhu. That way, you'll have one less mouth to feed and save some food for your Shi family." "What did you say?" Shi Yumei was furious. She suddenly stood up and yelled, "How dare you?" "Why wouldn't I dare?" Ran Jixuan also stood up and sneered, "He's just my bed warmer, a servant." "Selling a servant, do you think I can make the decision?" "You." Shi Yumei's heart turned cold as she stared at Ran Jixuan in disbelief. She thought that he had figured it out, but it turned out that she was wrong. He was obviously doing it on purpose. He knew that Cui Zhu was the closest to her, so he purposely said those words to hurt her. Shi Yumei felt extremely wronged. She had always been considerate of him, taking care of him, being considerate of him, and even standing up for him. She did all sorts of things that he couldn't be bothered to do, but in the end, she received such a reward in return. "Don't even think about it." Shi Yumei gritted her teeth. "Cui Zhu is my dowry, you have no right to talk about selling her. If you want to sell her, then sell Cui Bao instead." Ran Jixuan sneered and said, "Your dowry girl? Even you are part of our Ren family, let alone a mere servant. I'll call the human trafficker right now, let's see what you can do." Shi Yumei said angrily, "Fine. Then you can try and see who dares to take my people away without my permission." Ran Jixuan was stunned and stared at Shi Yumei with a gloomy face. "Shi Yumei, don't go too far. I, Ran Jixuan, will not be a poor man for the rest of my life. Don't think that your Shi family is so great just because you have some stinky money. I have nothing to say to you." Shi Yumei was so angry that she could no longer be angry. "Our Shi family has never looked down on you. You're the one who wants to think that way, don't force it on us." "Is that so?" Ran Jixuan sneered, "You want me to be grateful for a free meal, but now everything is my fault." "Humph. And your Shi family is so good, if you have the ability, don't come back to our Ren family for the rest of your life." Ran Jixuan kicked the chair beside him and left. Shi Yumei stood in a daze in the empty house. Even though it was as warm as spring, she felt a chill run down her spine. Ran Jixuan wrapped the 80 silvers in a handkerchief and kept it on his body. He ordered Cui Bao to take out a large cloak and put it on before leaving the Shi household in a fit of pique. He did not believe that he, Ran Jixuan, would not be able to survive without the help of the Shi family. In such a big city like Qingzhou, could he not buy a few affordable and decent gifts? Ran Jixuan wandered on the street in a daze for quite a while, looking at the bustling crowd shuttling back and forth, and at the shops on both sides of the street, which were decorated with bright red lanterns and ribbons, giving off a festive atmosphere. A bleak and desolate feeling slowly spread out from the bottom of his heart. He suddenly felt disheartened and dispirited. Soon, his feelings changed direction, and boundless hatred welled up in his heart. The Shi family, it's all because of the Shi family. Seeing that he was down and out, they actually humiliated and neglected him. When he became successful in the future, he swore to trample them all into the mud. Ran Jixuan angrily stomped his foot and snorted. He inquired about the direction of the antique, calligraphy, and painting street and hired a carriage to go there. During the new year, antique, calligraphy, and painting shops were doing very well. Most of the customers who came to the shops at this time were buying gifts. All the shops displayed their brightly colored, decent, and high-quality goods ostentatiously for customers to choose from. Ran Jixien still had some self-awareness, so he did not enter the shops with 100 years of history. He knew that the money he had on him was not even enough to buy a piece of paper from them. However, he did not bother to enter the small shops as he felt that stopping at the entrance would sully himself. After picking and choosing, he almost reached the end of the long street. Only then did he suddenly realize that he could not continue walking like this. He had to choose a shop to enter. Ran Jixien looked at the entrance for a long time before finally entering a calligraphy and painting shop called Xia Tang. The shopkeeper could tell at a glance that the clothes and cloak he was wearing were expensive and quickly greeted him with a smile. "Sir, what would you like to order? We have the best of the 4 treasures of the study, famous calligraphy and paintings. We guarantee that you will be satisfied." Ran Jixien subconsciously pressed the place where the money was kept and felt a little guilty. He could not help but feel sullen and annoyed. Since when did he, Ran Jixien, fall to the point where he could not even open his mouth to buy things? Mengxian was still the best. Which of those shops and restaurants didn't treat him as if he was their ancestor? They brought out their best products for him to choose from and put them on credit. However, he did not know that the reason why they allowed him to buy on credit was not because of his face, but because of the Sher family. Cough. Ran Jixien coughed and asked unhurriedly, "Do you have the best of the 4 treasures of the study? Show me a few sets of them." In fact, he quite liked the paintings of maids with hairpins and red plum blossoms with snow hanging on the wall, but he knew that those paintings were not cheap at all. At least, they were not something that could be bought with the 86 taels he had. "Oh, okay." The shopkeeper answered straightforwardly and smiled. "May I ask if you want to use them for yourself or as a gift?" "Gift," Ran Jixien said. "Give me something better." "Hey, is it for a friend? A relative? An elder or a junior?" The shopkeeper quickly smiled. "Sir, don't think that I'm long-winded. I can help you choose the most suitable one. I guarantee that it will make you proud." Ran Jixien was about to lose his patience but was stopped by the shopkeeper's words. He nodded and smiled. "Yes, it's for a friend. Give me something better." "Hey." The shopkeeper smiled. "There are 3 types of gifts for friends. Then I'll give you the top one." Ran Jixien wanted to ask how much the top one cost, but he couldn't bring himself to say it. He nodded vaguely. "Is it a set? Is it complete with ink, paper, and inkstone?" "Yes, yes. There's also a box. The box in our shop is of high quality. You can take it back and give it to someone as a gift. It's convenient, affordable, and decent. Sir, please take a look. What do you think of these 2 sets? If you're not satisfied, we have several more to choose from." While they were talking, the shop assistant had already taken out 2 sets of gifts and placed them on the counter. The shopkeeper opened them and smiled for Ran Jixien to see. The 4th room's gift box was laid with golden soft silk. It was divided into 4 compartments and just enough to hold the 4 items. It looked luxurious and low-key, which was the taste of scholars who pursued elegance. The shopkeeper was observant. When he saw Ran Jixian's expression, he knew that this deal was likely to be successful. He smiled and said, "What do you think? Are you satisfied? How many sets do you want? We have different styles here." Not bad, not bad." Ran Jixien nodded vaguely. His hands on the counter unconsciously clenched and loosened, but he still couldn't get the price out of the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper was momentarily stunned. He secretly looked at him from the corner of his eyes. He was secretly puzzled. Could it be that this person was poor? That couldn't be. His clothes, his complexion, and his aura were all different. Or, was he a spoiled brat who was strictly controlled by his parents? He also didn't look like one. If he was a spoiled brat, he would go to gambling, horse riding, and brothels, but he definitely wouldn't come to this calligraphy and painting shop. Hee, sir, why don't I wrap it up for you and send someone to deliver it to your residence? May I know where your residence is? The shopkeeper smiled and asked indirectly. Ran Jixien was delighted. That's right. When the time comes and the items enter the residence, how could they not obediently pay for it? Unless they were shameless. All right. Ran Jixien said happily, I want these 2 sets. Wrap up 4 different sets for me and send them to the Shi family of the richest family in Qingzhou. Shi family? The shopkeeper was shocked. He hesitated and smiled. May I ask if you are from the Shi family? Ran Jixian's face darkened. He snorted coldly. What? Do I look like a swindler to you? No. I didn't mean that. The shopkeeper quickly smiled. Look at what you are saying. It's just that I don't think you are one of the 3 young masters of the Shi family, so I just asked. Sir, please don't blame me. The Shi family also has a calligraphy and painting shop. Why are you here? Seeing that he didn't even bring a servant with him, the shopkeeper couldn't help but mutter to himself. Chapter 179. Looking at the shopkeeper's suspicious eyes, Ran Jixien felt very unhappy. However, he was a person who acted like a tyrant. When he was in the Shi household, he felt that everyone owed him something. He dared to give a cold shoulder to everyone and dared to complain. However, when he was outside, he was extremely concerned about his face and had to maintain a high and mighty attitude. Even if he was unhappy, he did not flare up. Instead, he straightened his back and raised the corner of his eyes majestically. He said proudly, I naturally have my reasons. So, you don't want to do this business anymore? No. The shopkeeper thought in his heart that no one in Qingzhou City would have the guts to pretend to be a member of the Shi family. Which noble family didn't have things that others wouldn't understand? As long as there was business, it was fine. As for the reason, who cares? Then, I'll send the Shi family up to you later? The shopkeeper smiled. And Ran Jixien nodded with satisfaction. The shopkeeper thought for a while and forced a smile. May I ask how I should address you? Someone has to sign for the goods when we deliver them, right? Ran Jixien did not want to say it, but he was afraid that the shopkeeper would not be able to explain it clearly and the Shi family would not acknowledge it. Wouldn't that be terrible? As long as they knew that it was something that he wanted and delivered to their doorstep, the Shi family would definitely accept it. He said lightly, My surname is Ren. When the time comes, just say Master Ren. Master Ren. I'll remember it. The shopkeeper nodded. I'll deliver it later. Don't delay for too long. Ran Jixien reminded him again and turned to leave the shop. Don't worry. The shopkeeper promised loudly. He did not dare to delay and immediately ordered his men to pack it up. He arrived at the Shi household almost at the same time as Ran Jixien. Everyone in the Shi household addressed Ran Jixien as Young Master Ren. When the servants heard Young Master Ren, they guessed that it was their own Young Master Ren, so they smiled and thanked the shop assistant before taking the items. The shopkeeper avoided the doorkeeper and smiled. It's fine as long as it's here. Master Ren hasn't paid yet. This is the bill. Do you think, didn't pay? The concierge had the most dealings with the Shi family every day, so he knew quite a bit about the Shi family's eldest young master. He couldn't help but secretly despise him in his heart, but now that the other party had come knocking at the Shi family's door, he didn't dare to mess around and ruin the Shi family's reputation. He smiled and said, How about this? I'll take the bill first. You can wait here for a while. The waiter had no objections and handed the bill to the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper took the bill and went to look for Steward Yu. He roughly explained the situation to him. There's actually such a thing. Housekeeper Yu's brows immediately furrowed. Eldest young mistress had just instructed them to prepare a New Year gift for the elders in eldest young master's family. Why did eldest young master buy so many study treasures out of the blue? He glanced at the bill. 900 taels. How impolite. The corner of head steward Yu's mouth twitched. He folded the bill in his hand and said, Wait here, I'll go ask eldest young master what to do about this matter. He didn't dare to make the decision on such a large sum of money, so he directly took it from the accounts. Eldest young master had always been strict with the accounts. Other than him and eldest young mistress, No one else had the authority to directly take out the money. Head steward Yu hurried to Ning Garden. Sangwon wasn't around, but Shi Fengju was. After hearing head steward Yu's explanation and seeing the bill in his hand, Shi Fengju's face turned cold. He didn't even have the energy to be angry. It seemed that the Shi family had treated him too well. Some people really couldn't be given face. The more they gave face, the more they didn't take it seriously. How could they do such a shameless thing? If this matter were to start, there would be trouble in the future. Sooner or later, everyone in Qingzhou City would know that this Master Ran, who bought things on credit, was the son-in-law of the Shi family. The Shi family's face would be completely lost. Shi Fengju returned the bill to head steward Yu and said lightly, "Since it's for Master Ran, then send it to him." "Yes, eldest young master." Head steward Yu understood tacitly and bowed before retreating. Ran Jixian was thinking highly of himself in the study room. He secretly sneered in his heart, "Weren't you reluctant to part with the stinky money? I won't let you have your way. Humph, unless your Shi family is shameless, you'll have to fork out this money." Ran Jixian was happily praising himself for being smart while imagining Shi Fengju's sullen but unsightly face. His heart was incomparably refreshed. When he heard that head steward Yu wanted to see him, he immediately thought that he must have sent the things over and hurriedly entered. Head steward Yu pushed the door open and entered. Ran Jixian blinked his eyes and saw that his hands were empty. He then looked behind him and didn't see the servant carrying the things. He couldn't help but ask curiously, "Where are the things?" "Ah!" Head steward Yu was stunned and puzzled. "Where are the things I bought?" Ran Jixian said impatiently, "Didn't you send them over to me?" "Oh, it's here." Head steward Yu went forward with a smile and presented the bill with both hands. This time, it was Ran Jixian's turn to be stunned. He suspiciously took the bill and looked at it. His face changed, turning red and white. He coldly questioned head steward Yu, "What's the meaning of this? Why would head steward Yu be afraid of him?" He smiled and said amiably, "Eldest young master, please listen to the old slave. A servant at the gatehouse asked me to pass this to Master Ren. He said that he bought a few sets of the 4 treasures of the study. I thought that these should be your things, so I personally came to deliver it to you." Ran Jixian was so angry that he leaned back and said coldly, "Why are you delivering this to me? Why didn't you send it to the accounting office?" Head steward Yu smiled and said, "That servant said that Master Ran wanted it, so naturally, it should be given to you. The accounting office only accepts the bills from the public, so this will not be accepted. Eldest young master, do you want to go out and pay, or do you want me to help you pay? That servant is still waiting at the gatehouse." Ran Jixian's face was gloomy and he did not speak. "If I had the money to pay, would I have waited until now? Even a servant from your Shi family dares to give me this attitude. I can't live in this place anymore. It seems that eldest young master wants to go by himself. Then I will take my leave first." Head steward Yu saw that he did not speak for a long time, so he tactfully bowed and left. "Stop." Ran Jixian said coldly, "Where is Shi Fengju? Is he in the residence?" Head steward Yu was very uncomfortable when he heard Shi Fengju call his young master so rudely. His face suddenly became long and he sneered, "Eldest young master, what are you asking? This is the Shi family, the young master's home. If the young master is not in his own residence, where else can he be?" What he meant was that the young master was the master and you were the outsider, so don't be too rude. Ran Jixian was so angry that he felt dizzy. He snorted and said, "Since he is here, send this bill to him. Even if I, as his brother-in-law, borrowed a few hundred taels of silver from him, I will return it to him with interest in the future. I will write a receipt for him right now." Ran Jixian was about to grind an ink stick and write in a fit of pique. He thought angrily in his heart, "Don't think that you are so great just because you have some stinky money. Since I am borrowing from you, you can't refuse me, right? If I throw this receipt in your face, let's see if you have the face to accept it." Ran Jixian thought that his action was a ruthless slap to Shi Fengju's face and felt a burst of joy in his heart. Unexpectedly, head steward, you said. This receipt was ordered by eldest young master to send it to you. I think eldest young master shouldn't waste your time. Eldest young master said that if eldest young master lacks the 4 treasures of the study, he will ask someone to buy the best. I really don't know why eldest young master would buy so many useless things. You should know that our eldest young master is a businessman. He will not pay for useless things. Ran Jixian's hand that was grinding the ink stick froze. He raised his head and stared at head steward Yu. After a while, he nodded his head. Good, very good. He slammed the table and glared at head steward Yu. Is the Shi family deliberately humiliating me? Head steward Yu sneered. Eldest young master, don't you think that it is too disappointing? Your food, clothing, housing, and transportation are not worse than those of the wealthy outside. You are a scholar, don't you know the principle of repaying kindness? You dare to lecture me? Ran Jixian said in disbelief. A servant like you dares to lecture me? Do you believe that I have a way to make you scram tomorrow? Head steward Yu snorted and said lightly, I am not a servant of the Ran family. Eldest young master, you seem to be controlling too much. You. What happened? Why are you making a fuss again? Shi Yumei pushed the door open and frowned unhappily. You came at the right time. Ran Jixian pointed at head steward Yu. This old thing has no rules and no respect for his master. Go tell your mother to scram tomorrow. What's the point of keeping such an unruly servant? You. Head steward Yu was so angry that his beard trembled. He had been in charge of the Shi family since he was 30 years old. Step by step, he was promoted to the position of the second head steward of the Shi family. For more than 20 years, the masters, mistresses, and young masters had never pointed at his nose and scolded him like this. Today, he was scolded by an outsider. What nonsense are you talking about? What happened? Shi Yumei couldn't help but frown and look at head steward Yu apologetically. Eldest young miss. Head steward Yu held back his anger and explained the situation. He then cupped his hands and said, I have already sent the bill. Eldest young master, please do as you see fit. I still have something to do, so I will take my leave first. What kind of person was this? If he said a few more words to him, this old life of his would be lost here. Shi Yumei was angry, annoyed, and ashamed. When she heard that he took the 80 taels of silver out, she thought that he would go out for a walk and calm down. Who would have thought that he would act up again? This was Qing Zhou, not Meng Xian. Shi Yumei had the same thoughts as Shi Fengju. With this beginning, how terrible would it be? How would she be able to live with herself if her family's reputation was tarnished? Head steward Yu. Shi Yumei hurriedly called out to head steward Yu. She took 2 steps forward and picked up the bill from the desk and stuffed it into head steward Yu's hands. She ordered without any trace of politeness, Take this to the gatekeeper and tell him that Master Ren has left the Shi family because of an urgent matter. Tell him to bring these things back. Give these 2 taels of silver to him as a fee for running this errand. Shi Yumei took out a piece of broken silver from her pocket. Head steward Yu glanced at Ran Jixian and saw that his face was dark and gloomy. Head steward Yu took the broken silver and the bill and left. As soon as he stepped out of the door, he heard the sound of a fierce argument behind him. Head steward Yu couldn't help but sigh inwardly. He thought that his eldest young miss used to be such a proud and arrogant person. He didn't expect that she would fall to such a state today. The fate of life was really hard to explain. Chapter 180. The waiter on the gatehouse waited for a long time for such a result. Although he was unhappy in his heart, since the person was no longer here, he could do nothing about it. He could only leave unhappily. Fortunately, there was still the 2 taels of silver to comfort him. His efforts were not in vain. When Shi Fengju heard Chong Huan's report, he couldn't help but laugh. He waved his hand and ordered the gatekeeper to leave. The more he thought about it, the happier he felt. This kind of person should have been treated this way long ago. Fortunately, eldest sister wasn't completely muddle-headed and knew her limits. When Sang-won returned from outside, she saw that Shi Fengju's expression was relaxed and his face was full of smiles. Sang-won couldn't help but be curious. She smiled and asked, "What made you so happy? Did a big gold ingot fall from the sky?" Shi Fengju smiled and said, "What's so good about a big gold ingot falling from the sky?" Sang-won knew that she had misspoken and nodded with a smile. "You're right. For a young master like you, it's only good for a fairy to fall from the sky." Shi Fengju pulled her hand and said with a smile, "What fairy? I already have. All of you can leave." Shi Fengju glanced at Lu Ye and the others before chasing them out. Seeing that they had all left, he simply pulled Sang-won into his arms and rubbed her slightly cold cheeks with a smile. "I already have you. Why would I still need a fairy?" As he said this, he kissed her cheeks twice. Sang-won blushed and gently pushed him. Her thin face was angry as she whispered, "Who wants to listen to your nonsense?" Shi Fengju loved to tease her until she blushed. Seeing her shy appearance, he leaned closer to her and whispered to her, causing Sang-won's heart to beat faster and her face to blush. Only then did he let her go with a smile and told her about how he punished Ran Jixian. Sang-won couldn't help but find it funny. She sighed and said, "Fortunately, big brother-in-law only said, 'Master Ran,' to the outside world and didn't say, 'eldest young master.' Otherwise, even if you blocked it, I'm afraid there would be gossip outside." News about wealthy families was often talked about with great relish. Even the slightest bit of news could spread throughout the city. Shi Fengju sneered, "Even if he said, 'eldest young master,' I'm still the same. I really don't know how this person's heart works. When has our family ever mistreated him? He's not grateful at all. Instead, he's thinking about those scoundrels who swindled his family's fortune." Sang-won sighed softly. "There's nothing we can do about it. I just feel that big sister is too pitiful." Shi Fengju glanced at her and said with a smile, "Oh, this is strange. Big sister humiliated you so much, and you were angry with her. Why are you sympathizing with her?" Sang-won rolled her eyes at him and said, "According to you, I should be gloating and laughing happily behind closed doors, right? That's one thing after another. I'm naturally angry with big sister for humiliating me. If I'm not angry, then I'll be a blockhead. But we're all women. To marry such a man, it's really—" Sang-won's eyes dimmed and she shook her head gently. In a woman's life, what she was most afraid of was marrying the wrong person. For example, in her previous life, she had the most right to speak on such matters. Now that she saw Shi Yume like this, she could really empathize with her. Shi Fengju hugged the woman in his arms tightly and lowered his head to her neck. He said gently, "Don't think so much. Just be a good young mistress of the Shi family. Your husband won't let you down." Sang-won's heart was filled with warmth. She unconsciously placed her hand on his arm that was hugging hers and leaned into his embrace. Shi Fengju could feel her tenderness and dependence. He was happy and kissed her earlobe before calling out softly, "Won Young." "Fengju," Sang-won suddenly said, "there's something I shouldn't say. If you feel that it's wrong, then forget it. Say it, I'm listening." Shi Fengju was slightly surprised. Sang-won hesitated for a moment before saying softly, "When will big sister's troubles end? Why don't we ask her for her opinion and just divorce?" "What?" Shi Fengju's body trembled and his eyes widened. "Divorce?" Although he hated Ran Jixian from the inside out, he had never thought of divorcing his sister. For a woman who divorced, even if she was from a wealthy family, it would be hard for her. She would be looked down upon and would basically spend the rest of her life alone. It was rare for her to remarry and live a good life. Sang-won secretly hated herself for being so talkative. But since she had already said it, she could only continue, "You've seen how big brother-in-law is. It's better not to have such a husband. It's better to live alone and not suffer so much. Big sister still hopes that big brother-in-law will become an official in the future. But from what I see, it's fine if he doesn't. But if he does, with his temper, I'm afraid big sister's life will be even more difficult." With the Sher family's wealth, Big Sister may be able to marry into a good family. As long as the person is reliable, even a second wife would be much better than now. The reason why Sang-won thought this way was because of her painful experience in her previous life. She used to think that her husband was the sky and could never be changed. However, that piece of sky had never sheltered her from the wind or the rain. It had only brought her endless pain. It was better not to have such a sky. If she still couldn't live a good life with him in this life, then divorce. Although it wasn't the best choice, she would still choose it. Because that way, she could at least fight her way out. Sher Fengju was silent for a while before sighing, "It's fine if you say this to me, but don't say it in front of Mother and Big Sister, okay? Mother won't agree to it, and Big Sister won't agree to it either." Sher Fengju thought to himself, "This silly woman really dares to say anything. If Mother and Big Sister were to know about this, it would be terrible. Since ancient times, it was better to persuade people to reconcile than to divorce. Moreover, she was his sister-in-law. If Mother were to blame her, even he wouldn't be able to protect her." Sang-won was already regretting meddling in other people's business. Hearing that Sher Fengju didn't have any intention of blaming her, she couldn't help but secretly feel relieved. She quickly smiled and said, "I only dare to say it in front of you. I'm not tired of living to let Mother and Big Sister know. I'm just stating facts. Poor Big Sister. Just pretend that I didn't say anything." When Sher Fengju heard this, he could see how much trust she had in him. He was greatly gratified. He quickly smiled and said, "I know you have good intentions, so I won't blame you. Actually, what you said makes sense, but..." Sher Fengju shook his head. "It's still too difficult. With my Big Sister's personality, it would be strange if she was willing to divorce and become an abandoned wife. It's my fault for not thinking things through." Sang-won happily admitted her mistake. "Honest words are unpleasant to the ear. I understand your good intentions. Don't take it to heart, okay?" Sher Fengju smiled and gently stroked her. Sang-won smiled gently and nestled in his arms. In the blink of an eye, the little new year had passed. The atmosphere of the new year was even stronger, and everyone in the Sher family was extremely busy. All the cleaning work had been completed. All the long corridors and both sides of the corridors were hung with large round red lanterns with golden tassels. When the sky turned dark, the people in charge of each area would light the lanterns one by one. The entire residence was bright red, and it was very festive. The flowers and auspicious plants that were in full bloom in the greenhouse were also placed in various courtyards. In the courtyards and corridors, there were large porcelain vats planted with camellias, wintersweet, four-season osmanthus, large azaleas, and small pots of auspicious grass, calamus, Chinese roses, azaleas, begonias, and so on. The flowers were bright and beautiful. In the rooms, there were all kinds of precious bonsai plants, such as orchids, clivia, peonies, and other peonies. They complemented the room full of wealth and gold, jade, and other treasures, adding a fresh and lively atmosphere. Ning Garden was also decorated with a festive and bright atmosphere. Sher Fengju had obtained many bright red roses and Chinese roses from somewhere outside. The corridors were crowded with them, and there were several vases on the shelves in the rooms. The vases were in full bloom, and they were as bright as fire. Sang-won was stunned for a moment. Sher Fengju excitedly asked, "How is it? Do you like it? That day, you said that roses and Chinese roses looked good in vases, so I got them for you." Only now did Sang-won remember what she had casually said that day near the plum blossom forest. For a moment, her heart was filled with a myriad of emotions. She smiled and said, "You really listen to the wind and believe the rain. Making such a big scene, it would be embarrassing if other people found out." Sher Fengju smiled disapprovingly and said, "What's wrong with me doting on my wife? These were all bought from the gardeners outside, not from the greenhouse in the manor. What are you afraid of? Do you like it?" Sang-won felt sweet in her heart, and she gently nodded and said, "N." When Sher Fengju heard this, he felt that it was worth it. He brought her to the table in the warmth pavilion to admire the beautiful roses in the large pink flower vase. He smiled and said, I also bought a lot of dried roses. You can try them when you bathe and see if they smell good. Sangwon blushed and said angrily, I don't need them. She knew that he was up to no good. Shi Fengju laughed and stopped teasing her, but his eyes flashed with interest. When Sangwon took a bath that night, she had just entered the bathroom when she smelled the hot steam mixed with the fragrance of roses. When she saw the flower petals that covered the surface of the bathtub, Sangwon's face almost turned green. She asked Luya, where did these come from? I don't remember having such an order. Luya smiled and said, it was eldest young master's order. Eldest young master said that young mistress has been exhausted these past few days, so adding flower petals to the bath can relieve fatigue and loosen up your muscles and bones. Young mistress, the water temperature is just right. You can soak in it for a while longer. Sangwon opened her mouth to say something, but she couldn't say anything. Luya had already closed the door and left with a smile. She couldn't think of anything else, so she could only take off her clothes and step into the bathtub. The strong fragrance of the flowers and the steam rose in spirals, refreshing the mind. The flower petals stuck to her shoulders, arms, and chest, and the snow-white skin was brightly colored. Sangwon sighed softly, leaned against the wall, and closed her eyes. After taking a bath, she put on a bathrobe and went back to the room. Shi Fengju was lying on the bed and looking at her with a smile, his eyes shining. Sangwon's face turned red, and her feet suddenly became hesitant. This person was really getting more and more. Wan Yang, come here quickly. It's time to sleep. Shi Fengju found it funny and reached out his hand to her. Sangwon glared at him and walked over. Before she could sit down, she was hugged by his long arms and couldn't help but fall into his arms. Sangwon let out a low, ah. Before she could recover, she was already in his arms. He lowered his head and sniffed her body. Let me see if you smell good. Sangwon couldn't resist him. After a few moments, she felt her face turn red and hot. She leaned weakly in his arms and complained coquettishly, I knew you didn't have good intentions. Chapter 181. What do you mean by not having good intentions? Shi Fengju smiled and pulled her into his embrace, gazing at her affectionately until she blushed and lowered her head. Wan Yang, you're so beautiful. Shi Fengju raised his head and caressed her blushing cheeks lovingly. Looking into her watery and clear eyes, he could not help but lower his head and kiss her gently. When she woke up the next day, Sangwon's body was still sore and weak. She moved slightly and tilted her head to look at him, only to see that Shi Fengju had already woken up and was looking at her with his eyes wide open. Seeing her watery eyes looking at him, he could not help but feel pity for her. He gently caressed her face and chuckled, You're awake. Sangwon glared at him and turned her head away without saying a word. Wan Yang. Shi Fengju was stunned for a moment before he hugged her and laughed out loud. How could his little wife be so cute? In the blink of an eye, it was the new year. Before noon, they had to worship the ancestors. Sangwon woke up before the sun rose. The housekeepers and daughters-in-law came and went, opening the doors of the ancestral hall to clean up, collecting incense, paper money and oil lamps, opening the storeroom to collect the utensils for worship, cooking the meat in the kitchen, preparing the dishes for worship the ancestors, and so on. When it was time, the whole family gathered inside and outside the ancestral hall to place the offerings and incense. Everything was carried out solemnly and respectfully. Since ancient times, women did not worship the ancestors, and men did not worship the stove. After the preparations were done, there was nothing for Wang, Sangwon, and the rest to do. The group of women retreated under Wang's lead and waited at the side hall. Inside, the second Lord Shi led the men to worship the ancestors. Second old Mistress Shi looked inside and thought of her son who was wandering outside. She could not help but tear up and raised her handkerchief to wipe the corners of her eyes. Looking at Sangwon, Shi Lian, and the rest, she thought of her daughter-in-law, Zhou Jingyi, who was still cooped up in her maternal home. She could not help but feel even angrier and hated that she would definitely bring her back after the new year. After worshipping the ancestors, everyone dispersed. Sang-won stayed behind to instruct everyone to pack up and arrange for people to take turns guarding the ancestral hall. She reminded them to be careful of the lights and then went to the main courtyard to report to Wang. She then began to urge the servants to prepare the New Year's Eve dinner. The Spring Festival couplets and window decorations also needed to be hung up after worshipping the ancestors. The maidservants of each courtyard received these things from the steward's wife who was in charge of this matter and happily hung them up. Eldest Missy is staying in Banana Courtyard to take care of him, so she won't be coming. Why aren't they more careful on New Year's Eve? Wang frowned and did not suspect anything. She ordered, "Tell the kitchen to send some dishes over. Also, check if it's serious. If it's serious, get a doctor to take a look and prescribe some medicine." Xiao Chun nodded and went to give the instructions. While the family was having a lively reunion dinner, the atmosphere in Banana Courtyard was tense and cold. Shi Yumei and Ran Jixien were arguing again. Ever since he failed to buy something privately, Ran Jixien resented Shi Fengju and the Shi family. Now that Shi Fenghua was finally back, he wanted to pull Shi Fenghua into his camp. He wanted to talk to him and show off his knowledge in front of Shi Fenghua. He wanted to gain Shi Fenghua's respect and admiration so that he could prove to Wang and Shi Fengju that he, Ran Jixien, was definitely a talent. He wanted them to personally beg him to teach Shi Fenghua. But how could Shi Fenghua not know what kind of person he had in mind? However, seeing that he was his brother-in-law, he had no choice but to greet him perfunctorily for the first 2 days after his return. After that, he refused to come again. Ran Jixien sent someone to call him, but he found a way to refuse. Ran Jixien was extremely annoyed and secretly hated him for not recognizing Tai. Thus, he no longer went to look for him, but his impression of the Shi family became even worse. On New Year's Eve, Ran Jixien knew that everyone was going to have a reunion dinner together, but he refused to go. He even forbade Shi Yumei from going. He deliberately wanted to make things difficult for them and discuss them. It would be best if he could make everyone unhappy. No matter how Shi Yumei tried to persuade him, he refused to go. Shi Yumei was furious, but if he didn't go, it wouldn't be good for her to go alone. Thus, she sat in the room with a cold expression. When Xiao Chun arrived, the two of them had just had a big fight. Feeling that the atmosphere in the room was not right, Xiao Chun did not dare to say anything. She smiled and said, "Eldest Missy, old mistress has invited you and young master to have a reunion dinner." When Ran Jixien heard Xiao Chun calling Shi Yumei before him, it was obvious that she did not respect him as the head of the family. He snorted and said, "Go back and tell your old mistress that we are not part of the Shi family. It is inconvenient for us to have a reunion dinner with the Shi family. Let's forget about it." Xiao Chun was embarrassed and looked at Shi Yumei pleadingly. Ran Jixien saw that she dared to ignore him and became even more annoyed. He snapped, "Didn't you hear what I said? Leave now. This servant will take her leave." Xiao Chun did not dare to say more and hurriedly left. Before she left, she gave Shi Yumei a look. Shi Yumei got up and ignored Ran Jixien's scolding. She followed her out and asked, "Is there anything wrong?" Xiao Chun smiled and said, "Young master said that if young master is not feeling well, it is fine if you and young master do not go. He will ask the kitchen to send some dishes over later." Shi Yumei felt grateful and nodded. She sighed and said, "Second brother is so thoughtful. Go back and tell mother that young master has caught a cold and we will not go. I will go and accompany mother later." "Yes, then this servant will go first." Xiao Chun agreed and turned to leave. Shi Yumei stood at the door and looked at the red plum blossoms in the courtyard for a while. She then returned to the room and faced Ran Jixien coldly. Not long after, the sound of firecrackers could be heard. The smell of food and the laughter of the people faintly wafted into the air. Shi Yumei was secretly sad and depressed. Ran Jixien sneered, "Who are you trying to impress? No one is stopping you. If you want to go, go. Humph, if your family really wanted to invite us over, they wouldn't just send a servant and casually ask us to go." Shi Yumei could not help but be angry. What else could they do? You are already living in our house and not a guest from outside. Is it impolite to send someone to ask us to go? Do you want Mother to personally invite you? Actually, you're not wrong. We're the Ran family, not the Shi family. We shouldn't have gone. Shi Yumei glanced at him indifferently with a dull expression. Ran Jixien, who thought that she would jump up in anger, was stunned. Ran Jixien could not help but be angry. This woman is getting more and more daring. Is she relying on the fact that this is her family and there is someone backing her up? She is getting more and more disobedient and opposing me. It was true that the daughter of a particular family would be shaped by her upbringing. It was absolutely true. Not long after, the kitchen sent the dishes over. There were 6 dishes and a soup. When the piping hot dishes were served, Shi Yumei said faintly, "Let's eat." Seeing that Ran Jixien was ignoring her, she ignored him and sat down at the table. She ordered Cui Zhu to serve the dishes. Ran Jixien was so angry that he glared at her. Cui Bao was quick-witted. She quickly smiled and said, "Master, today is the new year. You and Madam should have a reunion dinner together. Don't let Madam wait too long." As she said that, she helped Ran Jixien to go over. Ran Jixien glanced at Cui Bao with appreciation. Cui Bao was still the most considerate. Master's doting on her was not in vain. Compared to Cui Zhu, she was much better. Ran Jixien saw that Shi Yumei's expression was indifferent and wanted to make her angry. After sitting down, Cui Bao served him rice. He pulled Cui Bao aside and said, "Sit down and eat with us." Shi Yumei's chopsticks trembled. Her face was slightly gloomy, but she did not say anything. Cui Bao's eyes lit up. She was overjoyed and immediately sobered up. She smiled and said, "Master, please don't joke around. How would this servant dare to eat at the same table as Master and Madam? This is against the rules. Master, Madam, please eat quickly. Otherwise, the food will get cold." Shi Yumei snorted and her expression softened. She thought to herself, "At least you are sensible. My words are the rules. Why are there so many rules?" Ran Jixien insisted that she sit down. He looked up and saw Cui Zhu standing beside Shi Yumei. He said to her, "Go get a stool." "This servant doesn't dare." "Master, please don't make this servant suffer." Cui Bao's face turned pale and she knelt down. Ran Jixien could ignore it, but she could not. Her brain was not damaged yet. This was the Shi household. If she embarrassed Shi Yumei in front of the Shi family, Ran Jixien might not be able to protect her. Ran Jixien saw that Cui Bao was unable to get out of the embarrassing situation. He was so angry that he could only stare at her helplessly. He did not know that Cui Bao did not dare to obey because she was afraid of the Shi family. Instead, he felt pity for her. He felt that she was really sensible and sensible. "Quickly get up. Why are you kneeling on the floor during the new year?" Ran Jixien said gently and personally held Cui Bao's arm. "Thank you, Master." Cui Bao secretly glanced at Shi Yumei, who was eating as if nothing had happened. She heaved a sigh of relief and stood up gently. She smiled and said, "Master, quickly eat." And Ran Jixien nodded and ordered Cui Bao to serve him more food. Shi Yumei became more and more annoyed. She ate a few mouthfuls in a fit of pique and slammed her chopsticks on the table. She then got up and left with Cui Zhu. Ran Jixien stared coldly at her until she disappeared from his sight. He then turned to Cui Bao and said angrily, "Look at her. What is the meaning of this? Does she still see me as the head of the household?" "Master, please calm down." Cui Bao quickly smiled and said, "Master, it's not auspicious to be angry during the new year. Madam, she might be feeling a little unwell. Don't think too much. Madam isn't like this on a normal day." Ran Jixien sneered and said, "You're wrong. She wasn't like this in the past. Ever since she returned to the Shi family, she felt that she had found a backing and didn't see me as her husband anymore. She better not forget that she is a member of the Ran family. Even if she dies, She will be buried in the Ran family's ancestral grave and has nothing to do with the Shi family. Feeling unwell? Humph, I think she's just feeling unwell. Master. Cui Bao was so anxious that her face turned pale. Please don't say any more. Why do you have to do this? You're feeling unwell and Madam is also. Cui Bao couldn't help but feel resentful. Don't you know that this is the Shi family's territory? Don't you think before you speak? The Shi family might not be able to do anything to you, but how can a servant like me not be implicated? Are you trying to kill me? AI. Ran Jixien had always been unable to resist the pitiful tears of beauties. Seeing Cui Bao like this, his heart softened and he couldn't help but hold her hand and pat it gently. He sighed and said, Cui Bao, you're the only one who is considerate to me. You're still the best, you know how to think for me. There's no one else here now. Come, sit down and eat with me. Cui Bao subconsciously glanced at the room and quickly smiled. The rules can't be broken. This servant will just stand and eat. Ran Jixien was even more satisfied and nodded with a gratified smile. That's good too. Come eat. Help yourself to whatever you like. This servant thanks master. Cui Bao gave him a coquettish look. Shi Yumei estimated that Wang's courtyard was almost done with dinner, so she ordered Cui Zhu to bring De Mao's cloak over. She was prepared to sit at her mother's place and watch the night with her aunts and sisters, who knew that Ran Jixien seemed to be deliberately blocking her tonight. After dinner, he did not go to the study room to have sex with Cui Bao. Instead, he sat in the hall outside. When he saw that she was about to leave, he shouted, Stop! Where are you going? Shi Yumei lightly said, To accompany my mother and the rest. You're not allowed to go. Ran Jixien was waiting for her to say that. Of course, he would not agree. Today is the new year. As a member of the Ran family, you're not allowed to mix with the Shi family. Shi Yumei sneered and said lightly, Master, have you forgotten that we're in the Shi family now? What's wrong with me going to accompany my mother for a few words? These words poked at Ran Jixien's sore spot. He was furious and said coldly, If I say you're not allowed to go, then you're not allowed to go. If you dare to take a step out, don't come back tonight. Shi Yumei was full of anger and could not be bothered with him. She sneered and left with Cui Zhu. Good. The good daughter of the Shi family is rebellious, really rebellious. Ran Jixien had never been treated like this by Shi Yumei before. He was so angry that his voice trembled. Cui Bao comforted him for a while before he calmed down. Shi Yumei did not feel good either. She went to the entrance of the courtyard and reminded Cui Zhu not to speak carelessly. Then, she adjusted her expression and went in happily. Chapter 182. Tonight, the whole family was keeping vigil at Wang's place. As soon as they entered the courtyard, they could hear all sorts of laughter coming from the house. Compared to the silence at her place, Shi Yumei almost teared up again. The lanterns in the corridor lit up the courtyard brightly. The moment Shi Yumei and her servants entered, someone saw them. The maidservants quickly welcomed them with a smile. Eldest Missy, you're finally here. Old mistress is thinking about you. Another servant rushed in to report. I know that mother is thinking about me, so I came right after I settled young master down. Shi Yumei smiled. She was that arrogant Missy again. Wang's 3 sisters-in-law were playing cards. Nanny Jiang, Nanny Lin, Nanny Gui, and a few other maidservants were watching from the side. When they saw Shi Yumei, Wang quickly waved and smiled. Yumei, you're finally here. Quick, help me look at the cards in my hand. Your 2 aunts are really amazing. Second old Mistress Shi and third old Mistress Shi laughed. We don't have any helpers, so we have to do it ourselves. Wang's nature was undisciplined, so why would she spend time calculating the cards in her hand? It wasn't surprising that she lost. Shi Yumei stepped forward with a smile and said, This is second aunt's and third aunt's forte. Mother, if I make a mistake, don't blame me for paying for it. Her words caused everyone to laugh. On the other hand, Sang-won brought a few of her sisters-in-law to play in the warm room. From time to time, she had to take care of everything. Supper, fireworks at midnight, and red packets to be distributed to everyone had to be prepared in advance. After midnight, the bright fireworks and firecrackers dissipated in the night sky, signaling the arrival of a new year. The younger generation went forward to kowtow to their elders and give them red packets. The servants also kowtowed and gave them red packets to express their gratitude. Everyone was tired after a night of fun and went back to their rooms to rest. They still had to get up early the next morning to set off firecrackers and worship their ancestors. Sang-won and Shi Fengju returned to the Ning garden and hurriedly washed up and went to bed. Sang-won was extremely sleepy. As soon as her head touched the pillow, the sound of her even breathing could be heard. Shi Fengju shook his head and smiled. He gently laid down beside her and reached out to the back of her neck, pulling her into his arms and falling asleep. Shi Yumei and Cui Zhu returned to Banana Courtyard. When they pushed open the courtyard door, it was actually closed from the inside. Shi Yumei and Cui Zhu couldn't help but look at each other. "Open the door. Open the door. Madam is back." Cui Zhu gently knocked on the door. No one answered. It was completely silent. "Open the door." Shi Yumei kicked the door angrily. "Madam, be careful or your feet will hurt." Cui Zhu hurriedly pulled her back and continued to knock on the door. However, there was still no reaction from inside. "That's enough, stop shouting," Shi Yumei coldly said. "Ran Jixian, that bastard. He must have ordered us not to open the door. There's no use knocking. If they attracted the night patrol, they would lose face." "Madam." Cui Zhu was so angry that she was speechless. "It's so cold, what should we do? We can't just stand outside for the whole night, right?" Shi Yumei was stunned for a moment. She suddenly felt that the world was so big, but there was no place for her. She couldn't help but feel hot and tears almost fell from her eyes. "Why don't we go back to Madam's place for the night and talk about it tomorrow?" "No," Shi Yumei hurriedly said. "Mother will be sad and angry if she sees this. It's the new year, I can't make her angry." But Cui Zhu was speechless. She looked up at the tall courtyard wall and felt helpless. "Then let's go to the Ning garden and find young master and young mistress," Cui Zhu continued. "We can't just stand here for the whole night. It's so cold, your body won't be able to stand it." Shi Yumei moved her lips but didn't say anything. When Cui Zhu wanted to help her walk, she refused to move. If the Ning garden only had Shi Fengju, then it was fine. But there was also Sang-won. Would Sang-won laugh at her? She would definitely laugh at her. "Then please wait here, madam. This servant will go by myself and will be back soon. Madam, please wait for this servant." Cui Zhu saw that Shi Yumei refused to move and had no choice. She helped her to a shelter and hurried to the Ning garden. At this time, Shi Fengju was resting with Sang-won in his arms. Luya and the others saw Cui Zhu rushing to see the young master and did not dare to stop her. They could only knock on the bedroom door. Shi Fengju was a little unhappy, but he knew that Luya was not frivolous and would not act like this unless there was an emergency. He let go of Sang-won and gently got up. Who knew that he would disturb Sang-won? Sang-won grabbed his wrist and asked softly, "What happened?" "I don't know," Shi Fengju said. "Luya said that Cui Zhu, eldest sister's maid, came. She said that there is something important. You go to sleep, I will get up and take a look." "I'll go with you to take a look." Sang-won immediately sat up. Once she heard that it was about Shi Yumei, how could Sang-won sleep peacefully? Otherwise, Shi Yumei would complain to her mother-in-law that she didn't care about her husband and asked him to get up while she slept peacefully. Shi Fengju smiled helplessly. "Fine. Wear more clothes, don't catch a cold." And Sang-won agreed as she nimbly put on her inner clothes and tidied her hair. When the two of them came out, Cui Zhu saw that they were so wronged that tears welled up in her eyes. She wanted to say something but was unable to. "If you have something to say it slowly. What happened?" Sang-won was shocked and quickly held Cui Zhu's hand. Young mistress. Cui Zhu finally burst into tears and sobbed, Young master. Please go and see our young mistress. Old master, he asked someone to close the door of Banana Courtyard and not let young mistress enter. Young mistress is still standing outside. What? Shi Fengju was so angry that he almost jumped up and said sternly, There is such a thing? What the hell happened tonight? Husband. Sang-won said softly, Don't be anxious. Let's go over now and listen to Cui Zhu slowly on the way. It's such a cold day, don't let eldest sister catch a cold. Shi Fengju coldly snorted and ordered someone to bring a cloak. He hurriedly went over with Sang-won, Cui Zhu, and Luya. Sang-won coldly ordered Xing-ji, Pass down this order. No one is allowed to speak of this matter. Not even half a word is allowed to reach young mistress's ears. Xing-ji hurriedly agreed and went to instruct everyone. Shi Fengju also came back to his senses. This matter could not be blown out of proportion. Otherwise, eldest sister would become a joke. Thus, they chose a remote path and went through the garden. Young mistress. Young mistress. As they approached Banana Courtyard, Cui Zhu hurriedly ran forward and supported Shi Yumei, who was standing there in a daze. You're here. Shi Yumei looked up at her in a daze. She looked in the direction they came from and saw Shi Fengju and Sang-won in a daze. Her heart ached and tears welled up in her eyes, but she quickly blinked them away. Eldest sister. Shi Fengju's face was ashen. He went forward and gently patted Shi Yumei's shoulder. Sang-won stuffed a hand warmer into Shi Yumei's hands. It's windy outside. Are you cold? Shi Yumei gently shook her head and looked at Sang-won, not knowing what to say. Don't be afraid. This is our house. How dare he do this? Does he think that our Shi family is dead? Shi Fengju said hatefully. Shi Yumei hurriedly said, Pay. It's the new year and he doesn't even have taboos. How can he say such nonsense? Shi Fengju turned his head and ordered Luya, Go and find a ladder. Be careful and don't let anyone see. Yes, young master. Luya went with a servant. What are you going to do? Shi Yumei was taken aback. Shi Fengju said coldly, Of course I'm going in to settle the score with him. If the other party was determined not to open the door, he was too lazy to knock. As the young master of the Shi family, he would not fall to the point of begging others to open the door. Shi Yumei's lips moved, and she was dumbfounded. Sang-won did not think much of it. Shi Fengju's temper was not very good. Brother-in-law was going to be unlucky. Young master, the ladder is here. Not long after, Luya and the servant came back. The servant was carrying a bamboo ladder on her shoulder. Put it here. Shi Fengju pointed at the bottom of the wall. He went forward to support the ladder and climbed up. Fengju, let the servants do it. It's dangerous. Shi Yumei was anxious and hurriedly pulled him back. It's fine. Shi Fengju said, This isn't too high. I'll be careful. Sang-won also said, Be careful, and ordered the servants to hold the ladder. Seeing Shi Fengju climb up the wall, she lifted the ladder and handed it to him. Shi Fengju took it and placed it in the courtyard before going down. After a while, he opened the courtyard door from the inside. Won Yang, go back and rest first. I'll handle the matters here. Go back quickly. You still have to wake up early tomorrow. Shi Fengju said gently to Sang-won. Sang-won knew that it wasn't convenient for her to be around when he was teaching Ran Jishen a lesson, so she nodded and said, Then I'll go back first. Today is the new year after all. Husband, don't be too angry. Don't make things too big and lose face. Don't worry. Shi Fengju nodded at her and ordered Luya to accompany her back. Luya felt a little regretful. In fact, she really wanted to stay and watch the show. What a pity. Big sister, go sit in the room next door. No matter what I do, don't interfere. Shi Fengju's eyes darkened and said coldly, Sure you may felt a little unfamiliar with Shi Fengju like this. She couldn't help but feel a little scared. She nodded and went with Cui Zhu. Shi Fengju asked someone to bring a basin of cold water and kicked open Ran Jixian's door with the basin of cold water. Voila! He splashed the basin of cold water onto the bed and then threw the basin onto the carpet. Ah! Cui Bao screamed when she was suddenly splashed with a basin of cold water in her sleep. Ran Jixian also trembled and said sternly, "Who is it? Who is so bold?" The lights in the room were lit by a maid. Shi Fengju stood in front of the bed and said coldly, "Big brother-in-law, you are really enjoying this high bed and soft pillows. Where is my big sister right now?" Ah! Cui Bao was stunned. When she saw that it was her young master standing in front of her, she panicked and subconsciously crossed her arms and screamed. She hurriedly pulled the brocade quilt to cover her body. At this time, the brocade quilt was already soaked with cold water. Cui Bao secretly complained, "It's you. Get out of here. Get out." Ran Jixian flew into a rage out of humiliation, but he still tried to block Cui Bao as if he was afraid that Shi Fengju would take advantage of him. How could Shi Fengju put a servant in his eyes? In his eyes, the servant was just an object. He didn't even look at Cui Bao. He stared at Ran Jixian and sneered, "Get out? Are you calling me? You are in my Shi family's territory and you want me to get out? Big brother-in-law, are you mistaken?" Chapter 183. You. Ran Jixian said hatefully, "Don't think you're so great just because you have some stinky money. When I become an official in the future, I'll make all of you kneel in front of me and beg me." Shi Fengju laughed mockingly. "It won't be too late for brother-in-law to make a fuss when that time comes. What's the point of saying this now? Where's my elder sister?" Ran Jixian was fuming with anger, but he couldn't do anything to Shi Fengju. Hearing him ask about Shi Yumei, she coldly said, "How would I know?" "What? Didn't she go to talk to her mother?" Shi Fengju said, "She came back, but I don't know which pig or dog dared to close the door and not let her in. Humph, I don't know when my elder sister can't even return to her own home. Brother-in-law, shouldn't you give me an explanation for this?" So it was because of this. Ran Jixian couldn't help but feel annoyed. Of course, he couldn't admit that he gave a strict order not to open the door, so he said, "How would I know if the door was closed or not? The servants must have thought that she was going to spend the night there and not come back. What's wrong with closing the door? Humph, didn't she know how to open the door?" "I see," Shi Fengju coldly said. "So it wasn't brother-in-law's order?" "No," Ran Jixian denied without thinking. What a joke. Shi Fengju looked like he wanted to eat him, so how could he admit it? He thought to himself, "I won't admit it. What can you do to me?" "That's good." If he didn't admit it, Shi Fengju really couldn't do anything to him. He coldly said, "If that's the case, then the servants are insensible. Go, call all the servants in Banana Courtyard and have them stand in the courtyard." He coldly stared at the trembling Cui Bao and said, "And you, go to the courtyard too." This, before Cui Bao could open her mouth, Ran Jixian shouted, "What does this have to do with Cui Bao?" Shi Fengju lightly said, "She's also a servant. A disobedient servant should be taught a lesson. It's up to you whether you want to go or not." Shi Fengju said to Cui Bao. Cui Bao's expression suddenly changed, and she hurriedly said, "This servant will go, this servant will go." As she said this, she hurriedly put on her clothes. How could she not go? She already knew that Ran Jixian would not be able to protect her in the Shi family. When Ran Jixian saw that Cui Bao had actually surrendered without giving him any face, he was so angry that he was speechless. Shi Fengju glanced at him coldly and turned to leave. 5 or 6 servant girls and older female servants were already standing in the courtyard, trembling. Being called out from their warm blankets on such a cold day, everyone complained incessantly in their hearts, but no one dared to complain. There was only fear left in their hearts. When they saw that the eldest son-in-law's most favored servant, Cui Bao, had also rushed out and stood in a sorry state, everyone's hearts tightened. Shi Fengju's cold eyes swept over them one by one, and he coldly said, "I don't think I need to say much about what happened tonight. I see that each of you is used to living a comfortable life and have become unscrupulous. You dare to make decisions like this, where you don't even have your master in your eyes. If I don't teach you a lesson today, what rules do we have in the Shi family?" Shi Fengju sternly shouted, "All of you, kneel down. Kneel until daybreak. I'll call someone over to say that it's done. Kneel down." Everyone's expression changed, and they sucked in a breath. One of them quickly said, "Eldest young master, this servant is innocent. It was all the eldest son-in-law's orders." "That's right, the eldest son-in-law was angry. This servant didn't dare to disobey. Eldest young master, please have mercy. This servant won't dare to do it again." Shi Fengju coldly looked at them and did not say anything. He waited until everyone had explained, pleaded, and admitted their mistakes. Then, he turned to Ran Jixien, who was standing there with a pale face, and said with a faint smile, "Eldest brother-in-law, did you hear it? They said that it was your orders. Is it true?" Ran Jixien felt guilty and forced himself to let out a low humph before turning his head away. Of course, he couldn't admit it. How could he, who was well versed in the books of the saints, do such a thing? But he couldn't deny it in front of all the servants. Shi Fengju coldly smiled, stared at everyone, and shouted, "Still not kneeling down? You really don't have your master in your eyes. You still dare to slander the eldest son-in-law. You're really rebelling. If there's anyone who talks too much, I'll add another 30 strokes tomorrow." Everyone was shocked. Those who wanted to speak bit their tongues and looked at each other. They had no choice but to kneel down. They hated Ran Jixien to death in their hearts. If they had known this would happen, they wouldn't have listened to him. There were also some who secretly regretted their foolishness. They had forgotten that this was the Shi family. Since when did a son-in-law with a different surname have the right to call the shots? Shi Fengju's action was undoubtedly a slap to his face. Ran Jixien was so angry that he suffered internal injuries, but he couldn't say anything. If he didn't admit it, then there was nothing he could do. These servants didn't have their master in their eyes and slandered him. Shi Fengju was right and proper to teach them a lesson. He couldn't plead for leniency. If anyone dares to slack off, they should first consider who they are. Shi Fengju coldly said, then left with the servants of Ning Garden. Ran Jixien was so angry that he couldn't come back to his senses for a long time. "Cui Bao, come and help me change my clothes and make my bed." Ran Jixien estimated that Shi Fengju had gone far away, so he put on airs and ordered Cui Bao. The other servants were useless. They dared to betray him in front of Shi Fengju and complain about him. He wouldn't even frown if they had to kneel for 3 days and 3 nights. However, Cui Bao was different. Cui Bao had him in her heart. She sincerely thought about him and served him. How could he bear to see her suffer? Ran Jixian's words angered everyone. No one dared to challenge him. For a moment, countless gazes flew towards Cui Bao, as if they wanted to cut her into pieces. Everyone thought in their hearts, "If she dares to get up, I will definitely tell young master tomorrow." Cui Bao was also a tactful person. She didn't dare to get up. She lowered her head and said in a low voice, This servant is now guilty. This servant doesn't dare. Master, please order Sister Cuizhu around." In this entire courtyard, only Cuizhu wasn't punished. "What? You don't even listen to Master's words?" Ran Jixien coldly snorted and went forward to pull Cui Bao away. Cui Bao originally wanted to reluctantly get up and follow Ran Jixien. However, when she thought of the surrounding servants and Shi Fengju's cold expression, she desperately pulled her hand back and begged, "Master, this servant deserves to be punished. Please don't make things difficult for this servant." One after another, they were all rebelling against him. "Shi Fengju, that scoundrel. Is he forcing me to be alone?" Ran Jixien angrily snorted, stomped his feet and turned to leave. He looked at the door of the warm room and called for Cuizhu. At this time, Shi Yumei and Cuizhu were already asleep. Cuizhu woke up with a start and looked at Shi Yumei in fear and pleading. She knew that if she went out at this time, she would definitely become the target of Master's anger. She didn't know how he would humiliate her. But she was just a servant. What could she do when her master ordered her to? Shi Yumei saw her expression and couldn't bear it. She sighed and said in a low voice, "Don't mind him. Let's sleep." "Thank you, mistress." Cuizhu's pale face slightly recovered and she gently lay down again. In Ning Garden, how could Sang-won sleep? When Shi Fengju gently pushed the door open and entered, she immediately propped herself up and looked at him. "You're back." Shi Fengju smiled and took off his outer robe and threw it on the clothes rack. He smiled and said, "Why aren't you sleeping?" Sang-won blurted out, "How can I sleep when you're not back?" These words were too intimate, as if she couldn't get used to being away from him. Sang-won couldn't help but blush. She quickly asked with a smile, "How is it? Are you okay?" "I'm fine." Shi Fengju chuckled and half of his anger disappeared. He got on the bed and hugged her. "You said you couldn't sleep without me?" Sang-won rolled her eyes at him and said, "I'm just worried. How can I sleep with something on my mind?" "Oh." Shi Fengju faintly replied and was a little unhappy. Sang-won laughed and said softly, "Go to sleep." "I'm afraid it won't be long before you wake up." Shi Fengju still softly snorted and didn't say anything. This person really. Sang-won sighed helplessly. She took the initiative to hug his waist and snuggled into his embrace, trying to please him. Shi Fengju saw that she was as obedient as a kitten and was happy. He hugged her tighter and said with a smile, "You're tired. Go to sleep." Sang-won smiled softly at him and found a comfortable position in his arms and closed her eyes. She could not help but feel aggrieved in her heart. Listening to Nanny Lee's words, when he and Gu Fengzi were together in the past, they were always obedient to each other. But now, when it was her turn, she had to obey him. Sure enough, different people have different lives. They slept too late that night and woke up late the next day. Sang-won was flustered. On the first day of the new year, Wong only rolled her eyes at her and didn't say anything. Sang-won heaved a sigh of relief. She felt that half of the reason was because she was only a little late and it wasn't too ridiculous. Nanny Jong smiled and helped Sang-won to say something. "Young mistress must have been tired these few days. She's not the one in charge of everything in the household." "Yes, mother." Shi Fengju hurriedly agreed. He wanted to say this, but he was afraid that his mother would be angrier and did not dare to say it. Even so, Wong still glared at him and said, "What's so tiring about it? Which daughter-in-law doesn't go through this? Don't tell me that I have to personally instruct them on these matters? Didn't I go through this in the past too?" Nanny Jiang and Shi Fengju didn't dare to say anything. Fortunately, second old Mistress Shi and third old Mistress Shi came over in a while. Wong then changed the topic. On the second day of the new year, Sang-won was going to visit her parents. At noon, she went back to Ning Garden to prepare. "Leave these matters to the wet nurse and Luya. You should lie down and rest for a while," Shi Fengju said with a smile. Sang-won said, "How can I go back to my room to rest in broad daylight? It's the first day of the new year and people will gossip." Shi Fengju smiled and said, "Then lie down on the Kong bed in the warm room. Otherwise, how can you be energetic tomorrow? If your elder brother and sister-in-law see you, they will definitely blame me for not taking good care of you." Sang-won giggled and tilted her head. "My elder brother and sister-in-law only have praises for you. Why would they blame you?" Shi Fengju smiled and said, "That's because I've always taken good care of you. When we return from the 3 dynasties, I personally promised your elder brother." Chapter 184. Hearing him mention the past, Sang-won was a little embarrassed. She lowered her eyes and smiled faintly. "Is that so? Why didn't I know about it?" Shi Fengju smiled. "You weren't there at that time. Look, I've done it now, haven't I? Sang-won blushed and lightly nudged him without saying a word. Shi Fengju laughed and hugged her into the warm room. He dismissed the servants and forced her to lie down. Sang-won was indeed a little tired and did not insist any further. She took off her outer robe and covered her chest with the cashmere blanket. After a few words, she fell into a deep sleep. Shi Fengju sat at the side with a book in his hand to relieve his boredom. However, he was unable to read anything and could only gently caress her shoulder with a gentle look in his eyes. Being with her, even if he was just looking at her, he would feel a faint warmth spreading from the bottom of his heart, making him feel comfortable both physically and mentally. Such a peaceful and warm feeling of happiness could only be given to him by her. Third old Mistress Shi had not returned to her maternal home for many years. Tomorrow, she would be returning with third old Master Shi and their 2 daughters. Thus, after having her dumplings at Wang's place, she only sat for a while before returning to prepare. Second old Mistress Shi did not say anything at Wang's place, but she was unhappy when she returned. Nanny Lin went forward and smiled. Thinking about it, old mistress has not returned for 2 years. Why don't we prepare to go back tomorrow? I'm not going. Second old Mistress Shi was upset and said unhappily, Our son's whereabouts are unknown and our daughter-in-law is disappointing. What's the point of going back? We'll be a laughing stock. Thinking of her son, she could not help but feel pain in her heart. Nanny Lin's expression changed slightly and she did not dare to utter another word. The Cold War in Banana Courtyard continued. The servants knelt for an entire night and almost all of them turned into popsicles the next day. In the morning, Shi Fengju sent someone to wake them up. Everyone was relieved and quickly thanked him for his kindness. They struggled to get up and went back to their rooms to change their clothes and drink hot tea. After the cold and the warm, the sound of sneezing filled the sky. When Ran Jixian saw that Cuibao's cheeks were red from the cold and her lips were black and trembling, he felt extremely distressed. He quickly wrapped her in a large woolen coat and pulled her back into the room. He ordered Cui Zhu to prepare hot water for her to take a bath. Almost all of the servants in the courtyard had fallen ill with a cold. Only Cui Zhu could move. Helpless, Cui Zhu could only go to the kitchen and ask for hot water. Then, she went to the storeroom and asked for some medicine to treat cold, cough, and fever. She boiled a big pot and distributed it to everyone. Do you have nothing better to do? Ran Jixian glared at Shi Yumei and said coldly, Everyone in the courtyard is sick. Are you satisfied now? What good will it do you? Shi Yumei stared at him in disbelief and said, Are you blaming me? You asked someone to lock me out last night. Why didn't you think about whether I would fall ill? Can you face your own conscience with your words? Ran Jixian sneered, Aren't you worried about your mother? How would I know that you would come back when I didn't see you at all? Besides, isn't this your Shi family's territory? Don't tell me there's no place for a missy like you to stay. You did it on purpose. Ran Jixian gritted his teeth and said, You did it on purpose to embarrass me. You purposely asked Shi Fengju to come over and make trouble. Did you know? Shi Fengju, that bastard, poured a bucket of cold water on my head last night. He's indeed a profiteer. How ruthless. Shi Yumei was shocked. She didn't expect Shi Fengju to be so ruthless. But Shi Fengju stood up for her, so of course, she wouldn't say anything bad about him. She sneered and said, That's because you were in the wrong first. You deserve it. Ran Jixian said angrily, I deserve it. I deserve to be bullied by dogs. You people all have eyes on your heads. Ran Jixian felt that if he continued to talk, he would definitely be angered to death by his disobedient wife. He angrily left and went to see Cuibao. Cuibao was lying on the Kong bed in the study room. She had a headache and a stuffy nose. She was feeling terrible. When she saw him, her eyes turned red. She called out, Master, with tears in her eyes and couldn't say anything else. It's all because I'm useless. I've caused you to be wronged. Ran Jixian was heartbroken. He gently stroked Cuibao's face. Only when he saw Cuibao's attachment in front of her did he feel that he was a man. A man with an indomitable spirit. Master, please don't say that. Cui Bao struggled to get up with a hoarse voice. However, she was pressed down by Ran Jixin. Her eyes dimmed and she coughed a few times before saying softly, Master, you've already suffered a lot, let alone us as your servants. These words went straight into Ran Jixin's heart. Ran Jixin sighed, what can I do? This is the Shi household after all. He gritted his teeth angrily. Otherwise, they wouldn't dare to be so arrogant. Cui Bao's eyes flashed. Master, have you never thought of leaving this place and returning to Mengxian? Go back. Ran Jixin was stunned. He really didn't want to go back. Besides, he had nothing left in Mengxian. Even his house was gone. If he went back, where would he live and what would he eat? That's right. Cui Bao said, it's better to go back than to stay here and look at other people's faces. Master, think about it. Mistress is still the young mistress of the Shi household. No matter what, the Shi household will not abandon her. Ran Jixin's eyes lit up. He rubbed his hands and said, that's right. Why didn't I think of that? If he went back, Shi Yumei would have to follow him. He had no food to eat and no place to stay. Shi Yumei was the same as well. He didn't believe that Shi Fengju would let Shi Yumei live on the streets. All right, I've had enough of living under someone else's roof. After you've recovered, we'll go back. Ran Jixin said decisively. Cui Bao was overjoyed. She quickly said, Master is wise. When we reach Mengxian, won't it be up to you? Let's see who dares to give you a hard time. Recalling the scene in Mengxian where everyone tried to curry favor with him, Ran Jixin finally smiled with satisfaction. He couldn't wait any longer. He was really stupid. He should have thought of this earlier. Mengxian was, of course, 1,000 times better than here. As long as Shi Yumei was around, what did he have to be afraid of? Cui Bao was also happy. After leaving the Shi household, she was a member of the Ran family. Ran Jixin loved her so much. No one would be able to find trouble with her in the future. Master. Cui Bao's gaze swept across the room. These treasures and decorations are all ready-made. Why don't we take them back to decorate the room? It's better than buying them now. Yes, yes. Since he was the one using these things, they should be his. Cui Bao's words were absolutely right. Cui Bao continued, but I'm afraid that young master and the others won't allow it. You saw how young master was last night. Humph. Ran Jixin's face sank. He can't possibly argue with me. That's hard to say. Besides, this is the Shi household. They have the advantage in numbers. How can we win? Then what do you think we should do? Ran Jixin asked. Cui Bao was waiting for this question. She quickly smiled and said, that's easy. Since no one is paying attention these few days, why don't we secretly move the small items out of the house and hide them? Is that okay? Ran Jixin did not think that there was anything wrong with this. Instead, he nodded and praised Cui Bao with a smile. You're still the smart one. You came up with such a good idea. Ran Jixin made up his mind and stopped arguing with Shi Yumei. Instead, he had the thought of, just wait and see. When we return to Mengxian and the Meng household, I'll definitely change this bad habit of hers. She's really going against the heavens. Shi Yumei did not know that he had other plans in mind. Seeing that he did not pester her endlessly, she naturally did not take the initiative to provoke him. The next morning, Sang Wan and Shi Fengju took a carriage back to Sai village in Yonglu town. As usual, there were 2 carriages. Lu Ye and the 2 servants rode in one filled with gifts. Shi Fengju and Sang Wan rode in the other. This time, it was different. After getting into the carriage, Shi Fengju's eyes stared unblinkingly at his wife with a smile. He was so eager that he could not sit still. Sang Wan blushed under his unscrupulous and passionate gaze. She wanted to avoid it, but there was only so much space in the carriage. Wan Nyang, Shi Fengju stretched out his arm and hugged her. We're husband and wife. Why are you so far away from me? Sangwon glared at him. We were husband and wife before. Weren't you also so far away from me? Shi Fengju saw her pouting and his heart skipped a beat. He couldn't help but lower his head and kiss her forehead, nose, and face. Wan Yang, this is the first time we're going out together after we got together. Don't touch me in the carriage. If my clothes and hair are messed up, how am I supposed to face people? Sangwon smiled and pushed him. Don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Shi Fengju smiled and looked out of the window. The mountains in the distance were faintly discernible, and the scenery continued to recede. Including the time when he went to pick up the bride, he had already walked this path thrice, but this was the first time he felt truly happy and content. In the end, he did not miss her. Perhaps from the day he went to pick her up, she was destined to be Shi Fengju's woman. He was too slow to realize. Shi Fengju's heart skipped a beat. He simply hugged her and placed her on his lap. Fengju. Sangwon was startled and struggled to get down. Even when they were in the house, he had never hugged her like this. She did not dare to. If the servants accidentally barged in and saw them, she would not be able to face anyone. Don't. Shi Fengju hugged her tightly and smiled stubbornly. Let me hug you. No one will see. Sangwon looked at the closed carriage door and felt slightly relieved. She did not say anything and gently leaned into his embrace. Shi Fengju was delighted and became even more intimate with her. Along the way, he whispered sweet nothings to her. Sang Hong and Fong knew that they would be back today, so they began preparing the dishes early in the morning. At noon, they heard the village children running over and shouting, "The carriage is here! The carriage is here!" Sang Hong and Fong brought their children out to welcome them. Shi Fengju tidied Sangwon's hair and got off the carriage to help her down. Sang Hong and Fong came forward with a smile and said, "We've been waiting for you for a long time. You're finally here." The two children, Sang Quan and Sang Wan, who were wearing new clothes, rushed forward and greeted them with a smile. "Aunt, uncle." Sang Wan smiled and agreed. Holding each of them in one hand, she smiled at her brother and sister-in-law. "We were also thinking about today. It snowed a few days ago and the road was a little difficult. Otherwise, we would have arrived faster." Chapter 185. Fong hurriedly smiled and said, "This will be difficult for you. Once the snow melts, it will be the most difficult road to travel. How about staying for the night? Anyway, we don't have to fight for half a day." Sang Hong also nodded in agreement. Sang Wan and Shi Fengju looked at each other. Shi Fengju smiled and said, "Wan Yang also said that she wanted to stay for the night. Then let's stay for the night." Fong was overjoyed and smiled. "It seems that I have foresight. I've already tidied up Wan Yang's bedroom. Even the bedding is new." "Thank you, sister-in-law. We're a family. There's no need to be so polite." Everyone chatted and laughed as they entered the house and sat down. Sangwon looked around the house. It was still simple and plain as usual. There was not the slightest bit of embroidery. Fong knew what she meant. She smiled and said, "I'm still used to living like this. I'm more comfortable with living like this. Those antique vases and other decorations, I'm afraid they'll break if I'm not careful." Everyone laughed at his words. After chatting for a while, Fong and Mother Su went to the kitchen to prepare the dishes. Sang Hong accompanied Shi Fengju and Sang Wan to talk in the living room. When they talked about Sang Yufei, who was far away in the capital, Sang Wan and her brother could not help but feel a little melancholy. They did not know how he spent the new year alone in a foreign land. Shi Fengju hurriedly comforted them and said that the Shi family had a few shops in the capital. Shi Ming knew all about them. If anything happened, there would be people to help and express mail back quickly. Sang Hong was slightly relieved and quickly thanked Shi Fengju. Not long after, guests from the village came one after another. Sang Hong and the others hurriedly stood up to welcome them. This was also a village custom. Whenever a guest came, they would invite a few familiar faces to accompany them. If no one came, it was obvious that the family was not popular. These were the people that Sang Hong had invited yesterday. The central room was bustling with noise and excitement. Sang Won saw that they were all male guests. After greeting them, she got up and went into the side room. During lunch, Sang Hong and the others were outside. Fong brought the dishes into the side room and ate with Sang Won. Sang Won was originally on tenterhooks, worried that her second uncle and second aunt would come over to cause trouble again. She didn't expect it to be so peaceful after coming back. She couldn't help but ask Fong with a smile, "Sister-in-law, are second uncle and second aunt not at home?" Otherwise, with their temperament, there was no reason for them to be so quiet. They kept saying that they wanted to cut ties with Sang Hong, but that did not include Sang Won. Fong glanced at her and giggled, "You're not a fool after all. You didn't overestimate them. How was she not at home?" "It's just that their house is too busy right now and they can't leave." Sang Won stared blankly. Fong smiled disdainfully and said, "That second uncle of yours, a few months ago, bought a woman from town to be his concubine. Ai, what a sin. She's younger than Sang Ro by more than a year." "There's such a thing." Sang Won was shocked. She thought that it was no wonder. This time, second aunt would be very busy. Fong sneered, "Don't look at that concubine's young age. She's not easy to deal with. In addition, she's young and beautiful. She's very happy to fight with your second aunt. Now, there's chaos over there every day. The day before yesterday during the New Year, for some reason, that concubine and your second aunt started pushing and shoving each other. In the end, your second aunt accidentally rolled down the stairs and sprained her waist. Now, she's still lying in bed and can't get up. Tell me, how could she come to our house? As for second uncle, how could he have the nerve to pester his niece? He didn't dare to come to Sang Hong's house anymore. So, wouldn't it be peaceful?" Sang Won sighed and said, "Second aunt has always been very competitive. Who would have thought that she would fall into this trap at her old age? This is really..." Sang Won shook her head and didn't say anything bad about her elder. Pitiful people would naturally have their own detestable sides. This is what they mean by everything has its vanquisher. Retribution. Fong didn't have a good impression of Li and sneered disdainfully, "You think she's pitiful now, but how hateful was she when she was doing evil? Did she even leave a way out for others? Humph, Wan Yang, you can't be soft-hearted. Especially now that you're living in that big house, you can't be soft-hearted so easily. Think about it, if the Sher family had rejected this marriage, if your third brother didn't pass the provincial examinations, how would second aunt and second uncle have treated our family? That's really pushing us to a dead end." The others hadn't even said anything yet, but these two closest relatives had already taken the lead in gossiping and gossiping. This kind of person doesn't deserve any sympathy. Fong Shi sneered and said, "There's something even more infuriating and laughable. After second uncle took in a concubine, guess what your second aunt said to me? Humph, she actually advised me to take in a concubine for your eldest brother. She said that today is different from the past and if your eldest brother doesn't have a concubine, he would lose face. The villagers would laugh at him and say that I'm not virtuous. Humph, also, she said that I should buy 2 beautiful maidservants to train so that when your third brother comes back, he would have someone to warm his bed. Pay." Fong said hatefully, "Is that something an elder should say?" At that time, I didn't give her any face or words. As for taking in a concubine, your eldest brother can forget about it for the rest of his life. Before your third brother gets married, I, as his eldest sister-in-law, will definitely not allow him to learn from those shady people and have a concubine in his room. Once he gets married, his wife will naturally take care of him. Whatever they want to do, that's their business and has nothing to do with me." When this matter was brought up, Fong's face couldn't help but be filled with anger and hatred. Her mother-in-law passed away early. After her father-in-law passed away, she and Sang Hong had a hard time supporting the family. After going through thick and thin for so many years, Sang Won finally got married. Her son-in-law treated her and her family very well. Her third brother also finally had a bright future. After passing the imperial examinations, he could be considered to have no worries about food and clothing for the rest of his life. If he also passed the imperial examinations, then his future would be even brighter. Now, when the bitterness was over and the sweetness was about to begin, there was someone who wanted to give her a concubine. Not only would she be able to easily enjoy everything, but she would also cause trouble for her. Unless she was stupid, she wouldn't do such a thing. Eldest sister-in-law. When Sang-won heard this, she was also extremely angry. She hurriedly held onto Fong's arm and said gently, "Don't lower yourself to her level." She just felt uncomfortable seeing second uncle taking a concubine and wanted others to feel uncomfortable like her. Just ignore her. Our Sang family is so fortunate to have a daughter-in-law like you. Big brother isn't that kind of person. He won't have such thoughts. Fong's expression softened and she smiled embarrassedly. I couldn't control myself and made a fool of myself. But when I think about this matter, I can't help but feel angry. It's so uncomfortable. That day, I was so angry that I even argued with your big brother. Your big brother comforted me and didn't pursue the matter. You're right. As long as your big brother doesn't have such thoughts, it's fine. Why would I be angry? Don't say that he doesn't have such thoughts. Even if he did, it wouldn't do. Sang-won smiled and said, I understand big brother. He definitely won't. The two sisters-in-law laughed as they spoke. After pausing for a moment, Sang-won sighed softly and said, I'll go visit second aunt later. Since I'm back, I have to go visit her. Fong nodded and said mockingly, That's true. They cut ties with us, but they didn't cut ties with you. If you don't go, it won't look good. People will say that you don't recognize people after flying to a higher branch. She then sighed, Our family was used to being bullied in the past. Now that we've suddenly prospered, there are those who want to curry favor with us. There are also those who are jealous and spouting nonsense. We've done all the necessary etiquette. It's better to avoid others talking about us. There's no need to be disdainful. Sang-won nodded in agreement. That's right, Fong gently nudged Sang-won and frowned. How's that Miss Gu in your family? I've never seen such a shameless woman who married into the family during the mourning period. Is she still following the rules? Sang-won sighed softly and told her about Gu Fengzi's mourning period in February. She then said, She's been tormented a few times before. She's quite obedient now. It's just that I don't know if she's really obedient or not. As for Shi Fengju's promise to send Gu Fengzi away, Sang-won didn't mention it. This matter was too difficult. Firstly, she had already married into the family. Secondly, with her personality, she would never be obedient and would definitely play tricks. Thirdly, there was still Wang, this big mountain. As long as Wang insisted, Shi Fengju wouldn't be able to do anything. If this matter caused chaos in the family and provoked Wang's resentment, Sang-won's future would definitely not be easy. Although she had hoped for the outcome of this matter, she felt that she would only gain Shi Fengju's guilt for not being able to do it. This woman is really smart. Fong exclaimed and sneered in disdain. What dream? What dream interpretation? I think it's all a trick played by this woman. Did your mother-in-law and son-in-law believe it? Sang-won said, The elderly have always believed in such things. Moreover, Gu Fengzi is someone she loves and trusts. Why would she doubt it? Fengju, he didn't say anything. Fong rolled her eyes and smiled. You sure know how to protect son-in-law. It's useless for you to protect him. The key is to see what he thinks. Fong shook her head and said, I originally thought that woman would be in mourning for 3 years. 3 years is enough for you to have 2 children. But now, you haven't done anything, and she's about to end her mourning period. She's really smart. Big sister-in-law, don't worry. I know what I'm doing and will protect myself well. Sang-won said softly, Let's not look at other things. Now that second brother is a high scholar, he might even become a grand scholar in the future. Just based on this, the Shi family will treat me well. That's true, Fong said with a smile. That woman is all alone now. Without a family to support her, there's no need to be afraid of her. But there are pros and cons to this. Because she's all alone, your mother-in-law and son-in-law might dote on her more and be more biased towards her. If she doesn't know her place, her days will be really, Wan Nyong, we really can't help you with this. The matters in the household were indeed the most troublesome. Sang-won smiled and said, Big brother and sister-in-law have helped me a lot, haven't they? This matter is my own matter and should be handled by me. You don't have to worry about me. Fong smiled and said, It's good that you can think that way. You're from a rich family, unlike us from a small family. Even if it's not this woman, someone else will marry into the family sooner or later. You'll have to face it eventually. Sang-won smiled helplessly. Originally, she thought so too. But now that she heard Fong's words, she thought that Shi Fengju would marry another woman into the family in the future and treat that woman as intimately as he treated her. She felt a little uncomfortable and stuffy in her heart. Chapter 186. Not long after lunch, Sang-won ordered Lu Ye to bring some gifts to Ryo Kuwabara's house. Ryo Kuwabara was still angry at home. He was angry that Sang-won and Shi Fengju did not invite him over to accompany them when they came to Sang-hong. Even if he was no longer his second uncle, couldn't he be considered an elder in the village? This person was really cold and heartless. However, he was afraid of being scolded by Ri Zhong and the other elders, so he did not dare to go to Sang-hong's house. Unfortunately, Li was injured and could not move in bed. If Li could move, he would let her go over to take a look. When he heard that they were here, Ryo Kuwabara's face immediately bloomed into a smile. He hurriedly opened the door and thought to himself, Wan Nyong still has a conscience and still remembers us as elders. Ryo Kuwabara pondered. This time, when he saw Shi Fengju, he definitely would not let him go so easily. He had to get a promise from him. The Shi family had such a big business and so much money. Even if he did not give them 1 or 2 shops, they should at least help them manage the shops, right? Unexpectedly, Ryo Kuwabara looked behind Sang-won and did not see Shi Fengju's figure. He asked, Where's my nephew's son-in-law? Why is it only Wan Nyong here? Lu Ye could not help but curl her lips. Second master, you're still as impolite as always. Even big sister's wife did not use such a tone to speak to my young mistress. Sang-won smiled faintly and said, Young master is talking to someone. I'm here to see second uncle and second aunt. Oh, quickly take a seat. Take a seat. Ryo Kuwabara was a little disinterested, but he quickly cheered up. Compared to Shi Fengju, wouldn't Wan Nyong be easier to talk to? As long as Wan Nyong agreed, it would be no different from Shi Fengju agreeing. Shi Fengju couldn't deny his wife, could he? Wan Nyong, please have some tea. This is the good tea that master bought just before the new year. He kept it especially to entertain you all. The young concubine smiled as she brought the teacup forward. She was wearing an orange-red embroidered dress, and her hair was tied up in a bun. Her features were delicate and pretty, and her skin was fair and delicate. Her eyes were shining brightly. She was indeed a beautiful and intelligent woman. Comparing Li to her was like comparing an old cabbage to a fresh and tender vegetable sprout. Who would Ryo Kuwabara favor? Little Li Nyong. Lu Ye frowned and said with a sullen face, Our young mistress's name is not for you to say. Which family's concubine dares to say our young mistress's name in front of our young mistress? The new concubine was at the tender age of a flower. She didn't want to live a hard life, and the trafficker only cared about money. She was sold to Ryo Kuwabara, an old man, as a concubine. It would be strange if she felt comfortable relying on her youth and beauty. She acted spoiled and acted like a spoiled child in the Sang household. She was completely unrestrained. If she was angry, even Ryo Kuwabara had to treat her with respect. When had she ever been ridiculed like this? Her face immediately turned red, and she looked pitifully at Ryo Kuwabara. Ryo Kuwabara was also a little angry. He glared at Lu Ye and said in a low voice, You still know that this is a concubine? You're just a servant girl, yet you dare to scold your master's servant in front of your master? Luya smiled slightly. Second uncle, you're wrong. Little Inyang is not one of master's servants. Luya saw someone being disrespectful to master, so what's wrong with defending master? Master hasn't said anything, so it's not up to a servant girl like you to say anything. The new concubine sneered. She saw that Sang-won didn't say anything, and saw that she looked gentle and amiable. When she first came in, she also spoke gently. She thought that she was easy to talk to, so she sneered and refuted Luya. I will teach my servant girl. It's not up to you to worry. Sang-won glanced at her indifferently. She stood up and smiled. Second uncle, I heard that second aunt fell and injured herself. I'll go see her. As she spoke, she glanced at the new concubine and secretly shook her head. This new concubine really wasn't someone to be trifled with. Second aunt was a shrew who only knew how to be unreasonable. How could she be a match for this new concubine? Great aunt, don't be angry. I liked Great Aunt as soon as I saw her and couldn't help but want to get close to her. It's my fault. Our master often mentions Great Aunt and son-in-law and praises you. I heard a lot and couldn't help but call out Great Aunt's name. Don't be angry. Forgive me this time. The new concubine saw that Sang-won had spoken and her expression changed slightly. She quickly apologized with a smile. Her words were ambiguous. Not to mention Sang-won, Luya couldn't help but sneer. Little Inyang, you don't know the rules. Who are you, and who is Great Aunt? Who wants you to like and get close to her? What you... It's a joke. You. The new concubine angrily said, You're just a servant. You're even worse than me. What are you being arrogant for? You dare to lecture me. This is my home. Sang-won slightly frowned and said to Ryo Kuwabara, Second uncle, please help me say hello to second aunt. We won't disturb you any longer. Goodbye. As she spoke, she called out to Luya, Don't say too much. Luya angrily glared at the new concubine and pouted her lips without saying anything. When Ryo Kuwabara heard that she wanted to leave, he also became anxious. He hurriedly asked Sang-won to sit down and talk. He pretended to scold the new concubine. The new concubine had never been wronged like this before. She didn't give in and started arguing with him. When Sang-won saw that the place had become a pot of porridge, she simply didn't say anything and left with Luya, who knew that after taking 2 steps, she heard Sang-yen running down the stairs and whispering, Cousin, my mother wants to invite cousin over to talk. Looking at Sang-yan's timid and pleading expression, Sang-won couldn't just leave. She nodded and followed Sang-yen upstairs with Luya. She didn't look at the arguing Ryo Kuwabara and the new concubine. You shut up for me. Ryo Kuwabara was flustered and exasperated. She is our family's nobleman. Offending her won't do you any good. If you continue to talk nonsense and annoy her, I won't let you off. The new concubine stretched her neck towards Ryo Kuwabara and sneered, So what if you won't let me off? Hit me. Come on, hit me. Your family's nobleman. Humph, even a little girl dares to talk back. Do you still expect her to treat you as family? You're dreaming. Isn't it because you're talking too much? Ryo Kuwabara said in annoyance. If you're serving tea, then serve tea. Why do you have to talk so much? The new concubine sneered in disdain. Hearing you talk about her all day, I just wanted to see what she looks like. She's just so. Humph, with such a cotton-like personality, I'm afraid her life in that big household must not be easy, right? You're still hoping for her help? I think it's hopeless. Don't doubt me. Otherwise, why didn't the young master of the Shi family accompany her? Why is she the only one here? Ryo Kuwabara was stunned and was speechless. The new concubine saw that he was stumped by her words and became even more proud. She sneered softly, I have an idea, but I don't know if I should say it. Ryo Kuwabara glanced at her. Say it and I'll hear it. The new concubine chuckled and said, I think Sang-ro is a smart one and has high aspirations. Why don't you let your grand-aunt bring her back to be young Master She's concubine? Wouldn't you become young Master She's father-in-law? Isn't that much closer than the second uncle of the second gate? When that time comes, will the She family not care about you? With Sang Ro's help, your grand-aunt will have an arm. After the new concubine entered the household, she quickly formed an alliance with Sang Ro, who was also bullied by Li. Sang Ro only had one request, and that was for the new concubine to put in a few good words in front of her father so that her marriage could be quickly arranged. Otherwise, in another 1 or 2 years, even if she was to be a concubine, no one would want her. The new concubine promised and assured Sang Ro. However, she had just entered the household and was still relying on Sang Ro as her ally to fight against Li. How would she be willing to put in a good word for her so quickly? Now that she had accidentally bumped into Li and sprained her waist, Ryo Kuwabara could not bear to punish her. It could be seen that Li was no longer a threat. In addition, after meeting Sang-won today, the new concubine had an idea and moved on to Sang-won. The new concubine had heard Sang-ro vividly describe Sang-won's extravagant appearance when she returned and was extremely envious of her. If she could enter the She family, she would definitely be grateful to her, right? The She family was so rich that even a little bit would be enough for her to spend for the rest of her life. Furthermore, the new concubine had some selfish thoughts in her heart. She thought to herself, if someone like me has no choice but to be a concubine, what does Sang-ro count for? I still have to help you plan to be someone's wife? Why should I? Ryo Kuwabara's eyes lit up and suddenly became cheerful. That's right. Why didn't I think of that? But Sang-ro, Ryo Kuwabara frowned, obviously not satisfied with this daughter of his. The new concubine sneered, you only have 2 daughters. If it's not Sang-ro, then is it Sang-yen? Humph, Sang-yen is so honest that she doesn't even dare to say a word when she sees people. Sang-ro is just afraid of being beaten and scolded normally. After tidying up, her appearance and temperament are not bad. Ryo Kuwabara then asked, where is she? Where is she now? You're confused again. The new concubine said in annoyance, didn't old mistress say that she wants to eat rice cake? She soaked the rice early in the morning and went to Madame Wong's house to grind the rice milk. Ryo Kuwabara frowned. She only knows how to cause trouble all day long. She can't even stay in bed peacefully. Go find her and bring her back. Me? The new concubine pointed at her nose unwillingly. If it's not you, then it's me, Ryo Kuwabara said in annoyance. The new concubine snorted and slowly put on her thick clothes before leaving. Sang-won couldn't help but feel regret when she saw Li Li. Li Li only sprained her waist and couldn't move, but it didn't affect her performance. She grabbed Sang-won's hand and didn't let go. She cried and complained to Sang-won about her grievances, as if Sang-won could help her. Sang-won didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She was in a difficult position and could only try to persuade her. Li became even more energetic. She sniffed and said, Won Young is still the best. You still have me in your heart. You still remember me. My life is really bitter. Tell me, how can your second uncle treat me like this? I've been with him my whole life. That shameless little vixen caused me to be like this, but he can't even bear to scold her. Isn't this asking for my life? Won Young, tell me if he should or shouldn't. Sang-won awkwardly called out, second aunt. How could she answer this kind of question? She could only tell her to rest well. Young mistress, I'm afraid that young master will be looking for you. Let's go back and let second aunt rest. Luya said. Sang-won was about to agree when Li quickly said, It's fine. I don't need to rest. I'm going to get moldy from lying down all day. Won Young, accompany me and talk more. Won Young, second aunt really loves you. Won Young, you must help second aunt this time. Why are you making it sound so serious? Are you trying to scare me? Seeing her delicate and timid appearance, Li's heart softened. She couldn't say anything and could only sigh. "Mother," Sang Yen called out to her hesitantly and said, "I heard father and young concubine talking at the staircase just now." Before she could finish, Li spat and scolded, "What young concubine? What kind of young concubine is that vixen?" She then asked, "What did they talk about?" Sang Yen looked at her timidly and told her about how Ryo Kuwabara and the new concubine planned to give Sang Ro to Shi Fengju as a concubine. Preposterous! Li flew into a rage when she heard that. She forgot that her waist was hurting and wanted to sit up. She cried out in pain and hammered the bed. "That little vixen, that darned old man, what a good plan! Who does that little slut think she is? She doesn't deserve to enter the Shi family. Why don't you take a look at yourself in the mirror?" More importantly, after entering the Shi family, she would be able to soar to the top. Seeing her eating and drinking well and wearing silk and satin, how could she feel good? "This definitely won't do. Call your father up and tell him that I have something to talk to him about." Li said hatefully, "When Sang Ro comes back, call her up as well. Tell her that your father is also upstairs and tell her that she has something to say." Li knew that she couldn't do anything. With Sang Yan's soft personality, Sang Ro wouldn't move at all. With that vixen's help, Sang Ro wouldn't listen to her. She would only come if she said that Ryo Kuwabara was also there. "Oh." Sang Yen nodded. Giving Sang Ro to Shi Fengju as a concubine was a big matter. As the mistress of the household, Li couldn't hide this matter from her. Moreover, Ryo Kuwabara didn't think that she would reject such a good thing. When he heard that Li was looking for him, he thought that he also had something to talk to her about, so he might as well tell her about it in advance. Li didn't have to ask Ryo Kuwabara to tell her about it. She was also able to keep her composure. Her heart was filled with anger, but her expression was indifferent. She didn't see anything wrong and just smiled at Ryo Kuwabara. When Sang Ro came upstairs, she saw that her father was also there. Thinking about what her concubine had said to her, she was very happy. She smiled and called out, "Father, mother, you were looking for me?" Ryo Kuwabara looked her up and down. He saw that her body was well proportioned, her eyes were bright, and her lips were a little thin. However, her face could be considered delicate and pretty. Although it wasn't as outstanding as Sang Wan's, it wasn't bad either. She changed her clothes and dressed up. She was indeed worthy of being a gift. Ryo Kuwabara became more and more satisfied as he looked at her. It was as if he was looking at a valuable object. His face was full of smiles. Sang Ro saw this and was so happy that she was about to fly. She stood there shyly with a smile on her face. She looked a little helpless as she fiddled with her fingers. Her appearance was even more delicate and pitiful. Slut. A slut just like a vixen. Li was filled with hatred. She panted and smiled. "This is a good thing. Come here, I have a few words to say to you." "Yes, mother." Sang Ro was full of joy. Why would she be wary of Li? Moreover, her father had already made the decision. Li couldn't stop him no matter what. If she wanted to live a good life in the future, she would have to curry favor with her. Just look at how she treated Sang Wan before and after she got married. Sang Ro didn't expect that when she approached the bed, Li would suddenly grab her hand and pull it forward. She held a silver hairpin in her other hand and slashed it at her face. She said hatefully, "Why don't you take a look at yourself in the mirror? Who do you think you are? How dare you covet the Shi family? Is that a door that you can enter? What are you doing?" "Ah!" Sang Ro screamed and struggled to break free. She touched her face and her hand was covered in blood. She screamed and ran away. You. Ryo Kuwabara was so angry that he pointed at Li and couldn't say a word. Li was pushed by Sang Ro's screaming and struggling. She was in so much pain that her forehead and face broke out in cold sweat. She glared at Ryo Kuwabara with a gloomy face and sneered, "What about me? I'm not dead yet. That wretched girl can't even think of climbing up the tree. Haha, I'd like to see what she can use to seduce others after cutting that stinky face of hers." You. Rio Kuwabara sneered. All right, if she doesn't want to go, then Yen will go. In any case, one of us has to go. Don't even think about it. Li sneered. I've already talked to Wan Yang. Wan Yang said that she will find a good marriage for Yen. Humph. You dare to send her over? Rio Kuwabara was stunned and was speechless. As a result, Sang Wan would never accept Sang Yen. Moreover, Rio Kuwabara didn't think highly of Sang Yan's temper. Humph. He heavily snorted and left. Li lay on the bed and sneered. After the pain subsided, she began to think about how to sell such a big favor to Sang Wan and let Sang Wan remember her good. After all, she had helped Sang Wan drive away a strong opponent. She was also a woman and knew how much women hated their husbands taking concubines. How could Sang Wan be an exception? Knowing that she had helped her solve such a big problem, she could not show any gratitude, right? When Sang Wan and Lu Ye returned home, the villagers who came to accompany the guests had already left. Shi Fengju was talking to Sang Hong and Feng. Seeing that Sang Wan had returned, Shi Fengju smiled at her. Why were you gone for so long? I was just about to ask sister-in-law to call you. Sang Wan smiled and sat down beside him. Second aunt is sick, so she has a lot to talk about. Humph, that's for you. Feng's mouth had always been unforgiving, so she asked, how is it? It's not a big problem, right? Sang Wan smiled. Her complexion looks good. She should be fine after resting for a few days. Feng didn't say anything else. At noon, Shi Fengju drank some wine, and not long after, Sang Wan and Lu Ye helped him back to his room to rest. The Sang siblings had not seen their aunt for a long time, so Sang Wan went out to play with her two nephews after settling down Shi Fengju. Shi Fengju watched her go out, sighed softly, and closed his eyes to rest. The day passed in the blink of an eye. Not long after dinner, everyone returned to their rooms to rest. Shi Fengju finally had the chance to be intimate with Sang Wan. He hugged her and laughed. Wan Yang, do you still remember? The first time we slept on the same bed was in your boudoir. These words sounded too ambiguous, so Sang Wan smiled and said, what nonsense are you talking about? If others heard, it would sound like she had an affair with him before she got married. It's just you and me, what's there to be afraid of? Shi Fengju gently rubbed his cheek against her face and smiled softly. Wan Yang, do you know how much I wanted to hold you in my arms at that time? But you were extremely cold to me. Shi Fengju couldn't help but feel wronged. However, as if he wanted to make up for it, his hands started to move unruly. Don't. Sang Wan anxiously pressed down on his hands and bit her lip, saying softly, don't mess around. This isn't our house. Her brother and sister-in-law's houses were close to each other. If they made any noise and someone heard, she wouldn't be able to see anyone tomorrow. What's there to be afraid of? Shi Fengju's heart was moved, so how could he let her go? Sang Wan blushed. He kissed her until she lost all her strength. She struggled for breath for a while, but it seemed more like she wanted to resist. She had no choice but to go along with him and softly said, don't think about what's in front of you. Shi Fengju chuckled and whispered in her ear, I don't care about anything else right now. I only care about you. After a round of lovemaking, both of them were covered in sweat. Shi Fengju kicked a brocade quilt to the corner and said with a smile, your sister-in-law still remembers that we're afraid of the cold. She didn't forget to prepare another quilt. The last time they came back, the two of them were still pretending to be husband and wife. Sang Wan said that she was afraid of the cold, and asked Feng Shi for an extra blanket. Who would have thought that Feng Shi would remember to prepare an extra blanket for them? Needless to say, Feng Shi was considerate enough to prepare an extra blanket for them. Sang Wan couldn't help but laugh when she heard his words. My sister-in-law has always been careful. She always remembers what she said once. You're making fun of her. Shi Fengju pulled her into his arms and hurriedly said with a smile, I'm not making fun of you. I just thought it was funny when I thought about it. Wan Yang, it's really strange. We used to sleep in the same room every night, but I can still endure it. Now I'm not used to not having you. Sang-won suddenly remembered what she said to her sister-in-law during the day. She suddenly thought of Gu Fengzi and couldn't help but say sourly, "Is that so? When you have someone else, you'll naturally get used to not having me. Our family's cousin will be out of mourning next month, right? Are you jealous?" Shi Fengju's eyes flashed. He lifted her small and smooth chin and asked with a smile. Seeing him like this, Sang-won's heart became even more sour. She turned her head away to prevent him from pinching her chin and said faintly, "Because you're happy, how would I dare to be jealous? Aren't all women like this? This isn't something that can be changed by being jealous." As she said that, she couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. "Silly Wan Nyang," Shi Fengju sighed softly. He turned her face towards him and said with a smile, "I still remember what I promised you. Don't worry. When I get back, I'll tell Mother about this. I can't bear to see my Wan Nyang get jealous." Sang-won smiled embarrassedly and said, "Who's going to get jealous? Don't talk nonsense." She couldn't help but feel a little worried and said hesitantly, "Mother, she dotes on Cousin Fengzi so much. Will she think that I instigated you? What if she gets angry at me? Fengju, if Mother gets angry at me, I'll feel uneasy too. When you tell Mother about this, you must take it easy." "Don't worry." Seeing that she still cared about his mother's feelings, Shi Fengju was comforted. He kissed her cheek gently and said softly, "Mother won't suspect you. I know how to tell her." Sang-won was relieved and smiled at him. Shi Fengju pinched her soft waist and pretended to be angry. "You actually didn't believe me. Shouldn't you be punished, En?" Sang-won met his gaze and felt a little guilty for a moment. She lowered her eyes and said vaguely, You what?" Shi Fengju pinched her again unhappily and said hatefully in her ear, "I'll teach you a lesson when we get back." Sang-won's heart swayed and she couldn't say a word. She shrank into his embrace. Shi Fengju's heart was restless from her rubbing against him, and he could not help but hug her affectionately again. They only fell asleep after half a night. After noon the next day, the two reluctantly said their goodbyes and got on the carriage to return home. She didn't sleep well last night. Not long after getting on the carriage, Sang-won felt a little drowsy and her eyes were wandering. Shi Fengju hugged her and said, "Lean on me and sleep well. I'm here." Sang-won opened her eyes in a daze. "En? Aren't you sleepy?" Shi Fengju laughed and kissed her forehead. He smiled and said, "I'm not sleepy. I'll hug you." Sang-won gave a low hum. She closed her eyes and leaned into his embrace. From time to time, the sound of her breathing could be heard. Shi Fengju saw her sleeping face clearly for the first time. Her skin was smooth and fair. Her beautiful and delicate facial features exuded a quiet and gentle aura. Her cherry lips were slightly pursed and her eyelashes drooped. It made one's heart ache and couldn't help but want to dote on her. The more he looked, the more he liked her. The corner of his mouth couldn't help but curl up as he enjoyed her beauty. Chapter 188. After an unknown period of time, Sang-won suddenly moved, as if she was having a nightmare. Her breathing was somewhat disordered, and her brows were tightly knitted together. Her gentle and tranquil expression became flustered and pained. Shi Fengju was startled. He was about to shake her awake when Sang-won suddenly cried out, "Husband! Husband!" Her voice was sorrowful and desolate, with infinite pain and suffering. Hearing it, one would tremble with fear. "Wan Nyang! Wan Nyang!" Shi Fengju was startled and hurriedly shook her gently. "Wan Nyang, wake up, wake up, did you have a nightmare? Quickly wake up." After a while, Sang-won opened her eyes in a daze. She stared straight ahead, as if she was immersed in some kind of unspeakable emotion. Shi Fengju had never seen such a sorrowful and pained expression. He couldn't help but secretly think in his heart, "I don't know what kind of pain a person has experienced to have such an expression. What happened to Wan Nyang?" Wan Nyang, Wan Nyang. Shi Fengju was at a loss for a moment. He held her hand tightly and lowered his head to kiss her cheek. Wan Nyang, did you have a nightmare? And don't be afraid, I'm here. Your husband is here, Wan Nyang. Sang Wan stiffly raised her eyes to look at Shi Fengju. Her clear and moist eyes seemed to be filled with tears. After a while, she came back to her senses and said bitterly, Husband? Yes. Shi Fengju saw that she finally came back to her senses and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He held her hand tightly and said with a smile, Isn't your husband here with you? Did you have a nightmare? And Sang Wan was startled. She shook her head, then nodded. Just a moment ago, she dreamt of her previous life again. She dreamt that she was in a remote and dilapidated little courtyard in the dead of winter. She had a headache and a fever, cold and hungry, and there was no one who would even look at her. No one cared about her life or death. She didn't even care about herself anymore. Every moment she lived was just another moment of suffering. Don't be afraid. Shi Fengju's heart ached when he saw the look in her eyes. He subconsciously touched her eyes and said softly, Wan Yang, don't be afraid. It's just a dream. Why are you so silly? Really? Sang Wan asked blankly. Was it really just a dream? Shi Fengju laughed and said, Of course. Look, aren't I by your side? Sang Wan's nose turned sour and she could no longer hold it in. She laid in his embrace and sobbed. It was just a dream, a distant dream. He was by her side. At this moment, he was indeed by her side. Don't cry, don't cry. Shi Fengju's heart felt heavy for no reason. He gently patted her back and comforted her in a soft voice. She cried so miserably and miserably, as if it wasn't a dream but something she had experienced herself. Realizing this, Shi Fengju felt particularly uncomfortable. After a while, Sang Wan gradually stopped crying and sobbed softly. Shi Fengju gently let go of her and picked up a handkerchief to gently wipe her tears. Seeing her red eyes, he couldn't help but feel pity for her. He asked softly, Wan Yang, what did you dream of? Why are you so sad? Sang Wan's heart ached again when she heard this. She sobbed and said softly, I dreamed that you didn't want me anymore. Shi Fengju's heart felt like it had been hit hard. His face suddenly turned pale. He held her tightly in his arms and said word by word, What nonsense are you talking about? How could I not want you? You're not allowed to have this kind of dream in the future. She even dreamt it like it was real. Sang Wan couldn't help but snort, Relax, I can't breathe. Shi Fengju quickly let go of her and held her face, saying angrily, Wan Yang, how could you have such a ridiculous dream? How could I not want you? Promise me, you're not allowed to think about it in the future. Sang Wan felt a mixture of sweetness and bitterness. She thought, this isn't a ridiculous dream. This is the pain I've experienced personally. Husband, you once abandoned me and abandoned me like a worn-out shoe. This is real, it's not a dream. It's just that my previous life is too far away. Now that I think about it, even I think it's a dream. Sang Wan forced a smile and nodded gently. Husband, I'm just a little scared. Don't say it. Shi Fengju gently covered her mouth and said gently, I'm here. You're not allowed to think about it. I'll solve all the problems. Sang Wan didn't say anything else and gently snuggled into his arms. Shi Fengju lowered his head to look at the gentle woman in his arms. He couldn't help but gently hold her face and stare deeply at it. This was his wife, the woman he loved dearly. She actually had such an empathetic dream. It really made him angry and distressed. After returning to the Shi family, Sang Wan and Shi Fengju were both extremely busy for the entire first month. They both had to entertain their relatives and friends. They either had to entertain their relatives or visit other people's residences. As the new daughter-in-law, Sang Wan naturally had to bring her along whenever she went out. After 11 or 12 days, even Sang Wan didn't know how many people she had met and talked to. Ever since Shi Fengming ran away from home, second old Mistress Shi was absolutely unwilling to entertain guests or visit their relatives and friends. Fortunately, Third old Mistress She was also around this year and more or less shared some of the burden on Wang's side. This also reduced Sang-won's burden by quite a bit. Wang was also very annoyed by these kinds of visits. Other than 2 or 3 families that she was especially familiar with, she had to inform Sang-won beforehand. Remember everyone. I won't be taking care of it next year. It's your turn to deal with it alone. This made Sang-won even more nervous. On the 12th day of the first month, Zhuang Weixian and a few close friends invited Shi Fengju for a small gathering. Those who had wives would bring their wives along. Shi Fengju then informed Wang that he would bring Sang-won along. You must be tired out these past few days. The people who are coming with me tonight are all very familiar with us. There's no need to stand on ceremony. Shi Fengju held his wife's small face lovingly and smiled. Sang-won slapped his hand away and smiled. Then why don't I not go? Wouldn't it be better to rest at home for a day? No, Shi Fengju smiled and said, my friends have never seen you before. If other people's wives are going, then my wife should go too. Sang-won scoffed and said, fine, I'll go. It's just that I don't know the rules and etiquette. If I embarrass you later, you can't blame me. My Wan Nyang is the best woman in the world. Why would she embarrass me? You don't know how many people are envious of me for marrying such a good wife. Shi Fengju could not help but light up when he talked about his wife. Sang-won was embarrassed by his words and gave him a light poke. The banquet was held at the Jade Lotus restaurant. There were 5 to 6 people in total. Other than Zhuang Weixian, all of them brought their wives. They were all from reputable families in Qingzhou. After they met each other, they quickly became familiar with each other. These women had basically heard from their husbands that Shi Fengju and Gu Fengzi were childhood sweethearts. They also had many guesses about Sang-won. Now that they had met her, they saw that Sang-won was gentle and quiet. Her temperament was elegant and she had a strong scholarly air. Her every movement was graceful and generous. She had a charm that others could not compare to. However, she did not appear frivolous and only added to her liveliness. It was pleasing to the eyes and they could not help but have a good impression of her. They also saw that Shi Fengju was very concerned and protective of her. It was obvious that the relationship between the two of them was very good. Everyone could not help but secretly think that the legal wife was different from the concubines of the second gate. Just her temperament alone was incomparable to others. Everyone chatted happily until the moon was high in the sky. Only then did they disperse and return to their respective residences. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.